Hi everyone. Tonight, we step into the icy grip of a medieval blizzard. This is the kind of storm that rattles a peasant's shutters and makes even the bravest knight clutch his cloak tighter. The wind bites your cheeks, and snowflakes settle thickly on your lashes. You blink, but the world beyond your nose disappears in white. All you hear is the howl of the gale. In this moment, whether standing in a frozen field or trudging along a deserted road, you realize that without shelter, surviving the night is unlikely. Before we continue, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy my content. And leave a quick comment telling me your location and local time. I love knowing where these stories reach around the world. Now dim the lights. You take a deep breath, tasting cold iron in the air. Your cloak is soaked with melted snow. Wool layers beneath it offer little protection, water seeps everywhere. Your boots sink into knee-deep drifts, each step a battle against the storm's weight. In the back of your mind, you recall medieval Europe's winters, not just cold, but sometimes catastrophic. During the Little Ice Age, crops failed, and villages were buried under snow so deep people dug tunnels between houses. This isn't legend, it's history. Your fingers grow numb. You flex them, but it only intensifies the ache. Snowflakes sting your eyelids. The road disappears in minutes. You imagine peasants, shepherds, and pilgrims facing the same terror centuries ago. For them, survival wasn't a dramatic story, it was an annual gamble. Could their homes withstand another storm? Could they reach shelter before the cold killed them? You stumble against a half-frozen hedge. Branches scrape your gloved hand, sharp as knives, a reminder that nature offers tools as well as threats. Travelers often built quick lean-tos from branches, angling them so wind would shear off to the side. Not perfect, but better than lying exposed. Some chronicles describe people surviving blizzards by digging into snowbanks rather than fighting the storm. It seems counterintuitive, but packed snow insulates like wool. Historians debate whether these dens were safe or desperate risks of suffocation. Your breath clouds in front of you, stolen instantly by the wind. You imagine a peasant family huddled in a timber hut, smoke escaping a thatch hole, prayers whispered beneath their breath. A curious detail, in parts of Scandinavia, villagers rubbed walls with fish oil or animal fat. It kept wood supple, sealed cracks, and left the walls smelling like food. Combined with smoke, dung, and damp straw, it created a distinctive survival scent. The blizzard thickens. You know standing here longer isn't an option. Cold needles creep beneath your collar, sliding down your spine, forcing shivers. Ahead, dark shapes of trees blur against the white. Maybe shelter begins there. You push forward, boots heavy, lungs burning. Each step harder than the last. The thought of warmth drives you on. Snowflakes land instantly as you wipe your brow. The storm rages, relentless. Medieval survival wasn't about comfort. It wasn't about perfect shelters. It was about cobbling together enough protection, stone, wood, straw, even snow, to keep your heart beating until dawn. Tonight, that's your challenge too. Snow falls thicker, each flake joining a conspiracy to bury you alive. Lashes freeze together. Boots crunch softly in rising drifts. Moving feels like wading through icy quicksand. You pause, squinting against the gale, realizing snow might also be your ally. This sounds odd, but it reflects medieval ingenuity. You scoop a handful, dry powder slips through your glove, useless for shaping. Damp, heavy snow clumps like dough. With it, people built walls, shelters, even snow huts. Historians highlight this as an example of northern peoples coaxing snow into cooperation, not fighting it. You picture a stranded shepherd, far from home, caught in a sudden storm. Reaching the village is impossible. He carves a hollow in a drift. Inside, air is still. The snow outside, though freezing, traps body heat, a natural cocoon. Science explains it. Snow is a poor conductor, letting warmth linger. You hesitate. Should you dig? You spot a wind-formed mound. Kneeling, your knees go numb. Punching through the crust, you scoop a space. Snow collapses clumsily, yet the rhythm is oddly soothing. Medieval chronicles tell of soldiers in Baltic campaigns improvising igloo-like shelters after observing animals burrow in drifts. Knights, armored and exhausted, crawled into snow holes, frost clinging to their beards, yet alive. Survival mattered more than dignity. Historians debate whether snow shelters were common or desperate acts. Some preferred timber and stone, others vanished into snow caves, fires snuffed out by lack of air. You feel that uncertainty as you dig deeper. The space tightens. Your breath warms the pocket, but moisture drips down walls. Will it hold or suffocate? You lean back, shoulders pressing the curve. Outside, the storm muffles to a distant moan. It's quieter, almost comforting. Eyes closed, you listen to your heartbeat. Frost forms on your cloak where it touches snow. Body heat dampens the walls, droplets sliding slowly downward. The scent is crisp and clean, like freshly laundered linen, with a faint metallic note reminiscent of ice. You think of medieval children playing in snow by day and huddling in snow shelters by night. For them, fear and wonder were intertwined. Parents might reassure their children that snow protected rather than harmed, while silently hoping the storm would pass. In some villages, snow was even called the poor man's plaster because it sealed roofs and walls when nothing else could. Imagine peasants pressing snow against hut walls to block drafts. Strange, isn't it? The very substance threatening to bury them was the same one keeping warmth inside. Shivering, you try to picture what a medieval traveler might have carried in such conditions. Likely nothing luxurious, no down sleeping bag, no waterproof tarp, just a coarse wool blanket, a knife, and faith. Wool, after all, holds heat even when wet, a detail that has saved countless lives. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling the damp fabric cling with stubborn warmth. Time stretches in your snow hollow. Outside, the blizzard howls. Inside, the sound is muted, filtered through layers of snow and cloth. You press your fingertips into the packed walls. They are firm, more solid than you expected, as if the storm itself has granted you a fortress. Exhaling slowly, mist drifts into the dim light. You imagine monks, soldiers, and wanderers centuries ago, who must have felt the snow turn from predator to partner. Of course, risks remain. You recall a tale from Norway where villagers built snow caves during a blizzard, only for roofs to collapse under sudden weight. Crawling out, they were gasping, faces blue, eyes wide with terror. Survival strategies often carried double edges. What saved one might doom another. The lesson is clear: snow can be ally, foe, or both. Your toes throb. The chill creeps into your bones despite the insulated silence. You curl them, wiggle them, coaxing warmth. Thoughts of medieval remedies drift through your mind. Heating stones and fires tucked under blankets, clay pots filled with embers. Here, however, there is no fire, no glowing pot. Only your breath, your body, and the fragile trust you place in white walls. You realize silence itself can be dangerous. As the storm muffles, drowsiness creeps in. You think of those who succumbed not to hunger or collapse, but to sleep, drawn into icy dreams. Folklore remembers them as snow spirits or frost demons, warnings to stay awake. A Russian superstition advised that closing your eyes in snow lets spirits steal your soul. Practical advice disguised as legend: do not surrender to sleep in the cold. You force your eyes open, focusing on the flicker of light at the edge of your hollow. That thin crack means air, means life. You breathe deeply, steadying yourself, reminding your mind that morning always comes, even after the fiercest blizzards. So, you wait inside a shelter made of the very substance you feared, listening to the storm's muted roar. Eventually, you step into the trees. Outside, the wind roars like an angry sea. Beneath the forest canopy, it hisses, winding through creaking branches. Snow still falls steadily, but thick pines and oaks catch much of it. Tilting your head back, you watch branches bend under the weight until they almost touch the ground. Somewhere in this tangle of wood and shadow, you sense opportunity. Forests have long been humankind's first refuge. Your boots crunch over a carpet of needles. The resin scent is sharp. Snow is thinner here, broken by roots and leaves. Subtle, but the air stings less. Still bitter, still dangerous, yet softened by trees. Medieval travelers likely felt the same relief, collapsing at the forest's edge, shielded from the full force of the wind. Many early shelters were built within or along forest lines, where materials were at hand. You run your fingers over a low branch, rough against your gloves. In the Middle Ages, villagers harvested bark as readily as timber, not only for firewood or tools, but for shelter walls. Thin birch strips layered as shingles. Oak branches bent into frames for quick lintos. Pine resin, sticky and fragrant, sealed gaps. Nature's glue before chemistry had a name. Crouching to gather fallen branches, you notice some are brittle, others still hint at green life. You imagine a peasant family doing the same, children dragging sticks, parents arranging them into a frame, larger branches forming a triangular roof, then covered with snow, moss, or leaves. Crude, yes, but in a storm, crude was enough. Shelter was not about beauty, it was survival until dawn. Folklore adds another layer. Some trees were believed to offer warmth, not just physically but spiritually. Hazel was said to repel evil, oak served as guardian. Sleeping beneath them was protection of both spirit and body. You picture a medieval traveler choosing a sacred tree, whispering a prayer, curling into the roots. Whether it was faith or physics, comfort often begins with belief. You select a hollow between two thick trunks, naturally shaped like a small alcove. Snow piles at the base, sculpted by wind. You scrape it back, clearing down to the frozen earth. The soil smells faintly of pine and decay, a reminder of life beneath the snow. The space is cramped, but close air retains warmth. Layering begins, long branches leaned against trunks, meeting overhead, smaller twigs woven to fill gaps. Fingers stiff, work awkward, yet the frame emerges. Pine boughs cover it, needles prickly, scent sharp. Green contrasts the white world, creating a pocket of life. Historians debate how common these temporary forest lintos were, but the logic is clear. When storms rage, use what the forest offers. Nothing else matters. You pause. The wind's howl is dulled. Snow falls quietly, slipping off boughs in soft thuds. Branches creak like doors, needles whisper. You feel wrapped in a cocoon of wood and silence. Your breath fogs the air, curling upward into darkness above. You picture medieval hunters returning from the chase, dragging their kills behind them, seeking any dry corner to skin the animals. They might gather beneath the same kind of crude hut, smoke curling from a small fire at the entrance. The scent of pine mixed with meat, smoke, and sweat. For children, it may have been an adventure. For adults, it was necessity. An unusual account from an early Norse saga describes men building shelters by leaning shields against trees and covering them with cloaks. It sounds odd, a military kit repurposed as a hut, but it illustrates a key point. Anything could become a shelter when snow threatened life. Even in war, survival came before glory. Inside your shelter, snow presses against the walls. But instead of fear, you feel calm. Each added layer of snow insulates. Every drift seals you tighter inside. It's the same paradox. Snow both threatens and protects. You sit back, knees drawn close, listening to the muted sigh of the storm. Your body protests, toes throb, fingers ache, muscles twitch with fatigue. You shift on the forest floor, hard and unforgiving, but shielded from the wind. You imagine a medieval monk riding by candlelight in a cloister, walls thick and silent, while peasants like you shivered in lean-tos nearby. Two worlds divided by stone, sharing the same winter. Your eyes wander through a gap in the roof. Snowflakes drift down, glowing faintly in the moonlight. They land on your skin, melt, and run cold along your face. Brushing them away, you feel oddly comforted by the interplay of cold and warmth, as if the storm itself is tucking you in. Medieval villages often cleared paths to forests even in winter, because wood meant survival. Every twig and log mattered. You consider that as you settle deeper into your crude shelter. The forest is more than backdrop, it is lifeline. Without it, peasants would not have endured centuries of harsh winters. Under branches that groan and sway, surrounded by the resinous scent of pine, you listen to the muffled song of the storm. The forest embraces you, as it did countless others before. Tomorrow you may move on, but tonight the trees are your walls, your roof, your guardians against the blizzard. You leave the trees behind and step into a low, windswept hollow. At first glance, it seems unremarkable, a shallow dip shaped by ancient water. But here, shielded from the wind, you understand why medieval travelers often dug downward instead of building upward. When roofs could collapse, earth itself became protection. You kneel, pressing your gloved hand into the snow. Firm on top, soft beneath, you scrape at the crust to carve a pit. The deeper you go, the less wind reaches you. Archaeological sites in northern Europe show faint outlines of pits with charcoal, animal bones, and burned soil, evidence people truly hunkered down in such depressions, fires smoldering at their feet. These aren't grand homes, but survival etched into the earth. You scoop snow aside, breath ragged. Each layer exposes darker, frozen soil, damp and metallic, almost like iron. For medieval peasants, digging into the ground was instinctive. Soil insulated, walls held, and the pit's shape trapped heat. Imagine a family crouched in such a hollow, cloaks tight, voices hushed, watching sparks from a small fire. Travelers' accounts mention that people sometimes lined walls with animal hides to block drafts and damp. In the cold, the hides stiffened, rattling faintly like frozen drums. Where hides were scarce, bundles of rushes or frozen turf served the same purpose. Scholars debate whether these shelters were emergency measures or planned winter lodgings. Some claim they were last resorts, abandoned once storms passed. Others suggest semi-regular use by shepherds, woodsmen, and traders. The truth is uncertain, as pits collapse quickly, leaving little trace. You sense that uncertainty crouched inside the pit. Snow walls rise around you like a frozen amphitheater. Above, the sky is gone, replaced by swirling flakes. It is quieter here. The blizzard rages just above, leaving only muted sounds. Your breath curls in front of you, mist fading into the dimness. You imagine a medieval soldier trapped in a whiteout. No timber, no stone, no roof, only snow and earth. He and his men dig hollows with daggers and helmets, pressing shoulder to shoulder. Sweat, fear, and damp wool fill the air. Horses shiver outside. By dawn, only those who dug deepest survive. The exposed lie stiff in the drifts. Folklore echoes these pit shelters. In parts of the Alps, people spoke of sleeping in the belly of the mountain, describing caves and snow pits alike. The phrase captures the sensation of surrendering to the earth, hoping to be reborn. Come morning, your toes throb, aches spreading up your legs. You wiggle them, thinking of medieval remedies, stones heated in the fire and dropped into pits, radiating warmth for hours. Some carried small clay jars of embers under cloaks. Sparks risked fire, but frostbite was deadlier. Leaning against the pit's wall, you notice fine snow drifting back in. You brush it aside repeatedly. Snow itself was a constant adversary for medieval survivors. Every movement, every breath, was a small rebellion against it. Yet there is comfort. The earth beneath is solid, unshaken by wind. Curved walls hold you close. Even primitive, this shelter feels safer than the open. The containment is soothing, shrinking the world to a manageable space. You picture a frightened child pressed against a parent in such a pit. Comfort comes not from warmth, but from being together, hidden from the blizzard. Your thoughts drift to a 14th century monastic chronicle, recording peculiar accounts. During a violent storm, villagers in the mountains are said to have dug so many pits that, by morning, the fields resembled a graveyard. Whether this is strictly true or a touch of exaggeration, the image remains vivid. A landscape dotted with holes, each one sheltering a family or traveler. Each pit represents a quiet struggle for survival. You shift your weight, the cloak brushing softly. Your back aches from lying on the hard earth. You stretch carefully, mindful not to collapse the walls. This is the paradox you keep returning to, safety resting on fragility. One wrong move, and the wall could fall, leaving you exposed once more to the storm's fury. That delicate balance between endurance and collapse was the reality of every medieval winter. The storm rages above, yet down here, you feel calmer. Snow may smother, cold may bite, but the earth has accepted you for now. In the quiet and the faint warmth of your own body, you understand why medieval people turned to pits and hollows. Sometimes survival meant not resisting the storm but embedding yourself within it. The storm slackens briefly, and you seize the moment to climb out. Snow still falls, though less fiercely, and wind lashes your face. Crossing the whitened field, your eyes catch a darker mound on the horizon. It is neither a tree nor a drift. Closer inspection reveals a turf hut, walls layered with earth and stone, its roof nearly hidden by snow. These were not makeshift shelters but seasonal structures built with patience and skill. In regions of Scotland, Iceland, and the Northern Isles, people raised thick walls from what was available, stones gathered from fields, heavy slabs of turf, sometimes moss-stitched with roots. From the outside, these huts seemed humble, almost like small hills. Inside they held warmth. Medieval Icelandic records confirm families spent winters in such huts, ceilings low, walls half earth and half stone. To outsiders they seemed primitive. To the occupants, they were life-saving. You brush snow from the entrance, a narrow slit just large enough to crawl through. The wooden lintel is warped and swollen. You duck inside. The world transforms. The storm's howl softens into a distant hum. First, the smell reaches you, damp earth mixed with smoke, lingering on hair and clothes, a reminder that fires once burned here. The floor is hard-packed soil, uneven and cracked. Walls are thick, rough, nearly a meter in places. Your hand presses against the surface, cold, yet solid, like the bones of the land. Contemporary accounts show turf huts were widespread where timber was scarce, especially in Iceland. Picture a winter village, low houses, almost disappearing into the ground, smoke curling from small roof holes. Homes built for endurance, not grandeur, crouching against the storm like animals. An interesting detail from sagas: some roofs sprouted grass even in winter, green blades poking through snow. Strange to travelers, it seemed as if the earth itself bore homes. It was practical, not decorative. Grass bound the turf, prevented sliding, and added insulation. Come spring, sheep might graze above while families stayed warm below. Practical, though unusual. Running your fingers along the walls, you sense the layers of stone and soil pressed together. Imagine the builders months before winter, men cutting turf blocks, stacking them like bricks, women packing earth into gaps, children hauling stones, laughing amidst the labor. By snow's arrival, the hut stood ready, a structure born of planning and foresight, not a last-minute lean-to. Historians debate the hut's effectiveness. Some argue they were damp, smoky, and unhealthy. Others contend they offered steady warmth, especially if lined with planks or hides. Archaeological remains show hearths blackened with soot, indicating fires burned constantly. But with no chimneys, questions arise about air quality. Likely, people exchanged comfort for survival, lungs blackened, yet hearts beating when spring came. You crouch inside. Timber poles support the low roof, blackened with age. Picture a medieval family gathered here, bodies pressed together, livestock tethered near the door. Sounds of bleating sheep and lowing cows mingle with the fire's hiss and murmured voices. Body heat from humans and animals warms the small space. The air thick, sometimes stifling, yet better than the frozen void outside. One odd Norse practice: burying fish bones beneath the floor. Superstition for fertility and protection, or simple disposal, it remains a curious layer of meaning. Every hut contained not just earth and stone, but memory and belief. Walls held stories as well as warmth. You sit quietly, listening to the storm's muffled echo beyond the walls. Turf absorbs sound, creating a hush that feels almost sacred. Breath echoes faintly. Imagine a family crouched in such a hollow, cloaks tight, voices hushed, watching sparks from a small fire. Travelers' accounts mention that people sometimes lined walls with animal hides to block drafts and damp. In the cold, the hides stiffened, rattling faintly like frozen drums. Where hides were scarce, bundles of rushes or frozen turf served the same purpose. Scholars debate whether these shelters were emergency measures or planned winter lodgings. Some claim they were last resorts, abandoned once storms passed. Others suggest semi-regular use by shepherds, woodsmen, and traders. The truth is uncertain, as pits collapse quickly, leaving little trace. You sense that uncertainty crouched inside the pit. Snow walls rise around you like a frozen amphitheater. Above, the sky is gone, replaced by swirling flakes. It is quieter here. The blizzard rages just above, leaving only muted sounds. Your breath curls in front of you, mist fading into the dimness. You imagine a medieval soldier trapped in a whiteout. No timber, no stone, no roof, only snow and earth. He and his men dig hollows with daggers and helmets, pressing shoulder to shoulder. Sweat, fear, and damp wool fill the air. Horses shiver outside. By dawn, only those who dug deepest survive. The exposed lie stiff in the drifts. Folklore echoes these pit shelters. In parts of the Alps, people spoke of sleeping in the belly of the mountain, describing caves and snow pits alike. The phrase captures the sensation of surrendering to the earth, hoping to be reborn. Come morning, your toes throb, aches spreading up your legs. You wiggle them, thinking of medieval remedies, stones heated in the fire and dropped into pits, radiating warmth for hours. Some carried small clay jars of embers under cloaks. Sparks risked fire, but frostbite was deadlier. Leaning against the pit's wall, you notice fine snow drifting back in. You brush it aside repeatedly. Snow itself was a constant adversary for medieval survivors. Every movement, every breath, was a small rebellion against it. Yet there is comfort. The earth beneath is solid, unshaken by wind. Curved walls hold you close. Even primitive, this shelter feels safer than the open. The containment is soothing, shrinking the world to a manageable space. You picture a frightened child pressed against a parent in such a pit. Comfort comes not from warmth, but from being together, hidden from the blizzard. Your thoughts drift to a 14th century monastic chronicle, recording peculiar accounts. During a violent storm, villagers in the mountains are said to have dug so many pits that, by morning, the fields resembled a graveyard. Whether this is strictly true or a touch of exaggeration, the image remains vivid. A landscape dotted with holes, each one sheltering a family or traveler. Each pit represents a quiet struggle for survival. You shift your weight, the cloak brushing softly. Your back aches from lying on the hard earth. You stretch carefully, mindful not to collapse the walls. This is the paradox you keep returning to, safety resting on fragility. One wrong move, and the wall could fall, leaving you exposed once more to the storm's fury. That delicate balance between endurance and collapse was the reality of every medieval winter. The storm rages above, yet down here, you feel calmer. Snow may smother, cold may bite, but the earth has accepted you for now. In the quiet and the faint warmth of your own body, you understand why medieval people turned to pits and hollows. Sometimes survival meant not resisting the storm but embedding yourself within it. The storm slackens briefly, and you seize the moment to climb out. Snow still falls, though less fiercely, and wind lashes your face. Crossing the whitened field, your eyes catch a darker mound on the horizon. It is neither a tree nor a drift. Closer inspection reveals a turf hut, walls layered with earth and stone, its roof nearly hidden by snow. These were not makeshift shelters but seasonal structures built with patience and skill. In regions of Scotland, Iceland, and the Northern Isles, people raised thick walls from what was available, stones gathered from fields, heavy slabs of turf, sometimes moss-stitched with roots. From the outside, these huts seemed humble, almost like small hills. Inside they held warmth. Medieval Icelandic records confirm families spent winters in such huts, ceilings low, walls half earth and half stone. To outsiders they seemed primitive. To the occupants, they were life-saving. You brush snow from the entrance, a narrow slit just large enough to crawl through. The wooden lintel is warped and swollen. You duck inside. The world transforms. The storm's howl softens into a distant hum. First, the smell reaches you, damp earth mixed with smoke, lingering on hair and clothes, a reminder that fires once burned here. The floor is hard-packed soil, uneven and cracked. Walls are thick, rough, nearly a meter in places. Your hand presses against the surface, cold, yet solid, like the bones of the land. Contemporary accounts show turf huts were widespread where timber was scarce, especially in Iceland. Picture a winter village, low houses, almost disappearing into the ground, smoke curling from small roof holes. Homes built for endurance, not grandeur, crouching against the storm like animals. An interesting detail from sagas: some roofs sprouted grass even in winter, green blades poking through snow. Strange to travelers, it seemed as if the earth itself bore homes. It was practical, not decorative. Grass bound the turf, prevented sliding, and added insulation. Come spring, sheep might graze above while families stayed warm below. Practical, though unusual. Running your fingers along the walls, you sense the layers of stone and soil pressed together. Imagine the builders months before winter, men cutting turf blocks, stacking them like bricks, women packing earth into gaps, children hauling stones, laughing amidst the labor. By snow's arrival, the hut stood ready, a structure born of planning and foresight, not a last-minute lean-to. Historians debate the hut's effectiveness. Some argue they were damp, smoky, and unhealthy. Others contend they offered steady warmth, especially if lined with planks or hides. Archaeological remains show hearths blackened with soot, indicating fires burned constantly. But with no chimneys, questions arise about air quality. Likely, people exchanged comfort for survival, lungs blackened, yet hearts beating when spring came. You crouch inside. Timber poles support the low roof, blackened with age. Picture a medieval family gathered here, bodies pressed together, livestock tethered near the door. Sounds of bleating sheep and lowing cows mingle with the fire's hiss and murmured voices. Body heat from humans and animals warms the small space. The air thick, sometimes stifling, yet better than the frozen void outside. One odd Norse practice: burying fish bones beneath the floor. Superstition for fertility and protection, or simple disposal, it remains a curious layer of meaning. Every hut contained not just earth and stone, but memory and belief. Walls held stories as well as warmth. You sit quietly, listening to the storm's muffled echo beyond the walls. Turf absorbs sound, creating a hush that feels almost sacred. Breath echoes faintly. Imagine a family crouched in such a hollow, cloaks tight, voices hushed, watching sparks from a small fire. Travelers' accounts mention that people sometimes lined walls with animal hides to block drafts and damp. In the cold, the hides stiffened, rattling faintly like frozen drums. Where hides were scarce, bundles of rushes or frozen turf served the same purpose. Scholars debate whether these shelters were emergency measures or planned winter lodgings. Some claim they were last resorts, abandoned once storms passed. Others suggest semi-regular use by shepherds, woodsmen, and traders. The truth is uncertain, as pits collapse quickly, leaving little trace. You sense that uncertainty crouched inside the pit. Snow walls rise around you like a frozen amphitheater. Above, the sky is gone, replaced by swirling flakes. It is quieter here. The blizzard rages just above, leaving only muted sounds. Your breath curls in front of you, mist fading into the dimness. You imagine a medieval soldier trapped in a whiteout. No timber, no stone, no roof, only snow and earth. He and his men dig hollows with daggers and helmets, pressing shoulder to shoulder. Sweat, fear, and damp wool fill the air. Horses shiver outside. By dawn, only those who dug deepest survive. The exposed lie stiff in the drifts. Folklore echoes these pit shelters. In parts of the Alps, people spoke of sleeping in the belly of the mountain, describing caves and snow pits alike. The phrase captures the sensation of surrendering to the earth, hoping to be reborn. Come morning, your toes throb, aches spreading up your legs. You wiggle them, thinking of medieval remedies, stones heated in the fire and dropped into pits, radiating warmth for hours. Some carried small clay jars of embers under cloaks. Sparks risked fire, but frostbite was deadlier. Leaning against the pit's wall, you notice fine snow drifting back in. You brush it aside repeatedly. Snow itself was a constant adversary for medieval survivors. Every movement, every breath, was a small rebellion against it. Yet there is comfort. The earth beneath is solid, unshaken by wind. Curved walls hold you close. Even primitive, this shelter feels safer than the open. The containment is soothing, shrinking the world to a manageable space. You picture a frightened child pressed against a parent in such a pit. Comfort comes not from warmth, but from being together, hidden from the blizzard. Your thoughts drift to a 14th-century monastic chronicle, recording peculiar accounts. During a violent storm, villagers in the mountains are said to have dug so many pits that, by morning, the fields resembled a graveyard. Whether this is strictly true or a touch of exaggeration, the image remains vivid. A landscape dotted with holes, each one sheltering a family or traveler. Each pit represents a quiet struggle for survival. You shift your weight, the cloak brushing softly. Your back aches from lying on the hard earth. You stretch carefully, mindful not to collapse the walls. This is the paradox you keep returning to, safety resting on fragility. One wrong move, and the wall could fall, leaving you exposed once more to the storm's fury. That delicate balance between endurance and collapse was the reality of every medieval winter. The storm rages above, yet down here, you feel calmer. Snow may smother, cold may bite, but the earth has accepted you for now. In the quiet and the faint warmth of your own body, you understand why medieval people turned to pits and hollows. Sometimes survival meant not resisting the storm but embedding yourself within it. The storm slackens briefly, and you seize the moment to climb out. Snow still falls, though less fiercely, and wind lashes your face. Crossing the whitened field, your eyes catch a darker mound on the horizon. It is neither a tree nor a drift. Closer inspection reveals a turf hut, walls layered with earth and stone, its roof nearly hidden by snow. These were not makeshift shelters but seasonal structures built with patience and skill. In regions of Scotland, Iceland, and the Northern Isles, people raised thick walls from what was available, stones gathered from fields, heavy slabs of turf, sometimes moss-stitched with roots. From the outside, these huts seemed humble, almost like small hills. Inside they held warmth. Medieval Icelandic records confirm families spent winters in such huts, ceilings low, walls half earth and half stone. To outsiders they seemed primitive. To the occupants, they were life-saving. You brush snow from the entrance, a narrow slit just large enough to crawl through. The wooden lintel is warped and swollen. You duck inside. The world transforms. The storm's howl softens into a distant hum. First, the smell reaches you, damp earth mixed with smoke, lingering on hair and clothes, a reminder that fires once burned here. The floor is hard-packed soil, uneven and cracked. Walls are thick, rough, nearly a meter in places. Your hand presses against the surface, cold, yet solid, like the bones of the land. Contemporary accounts show turf huts were widespread where timber was scarce, especially in Iceland. Picture a winter village, low houses, almost disappearing into the ground, smoke curling from small roof holes. Homes built for endurance, not grandeur, crouching against the storm like animals. An interesting detail from sagas: some roofs sprouted grass even in winter, green blades poking through snow. Strange to travelers, it seemed as if the earth itself bore homes. It was practical, not decorative. Grass bound the turf, prevented sliding, and added insulation. Come spring, sheep might graze above while families stayed warm below. Practical, though unusual. Running your fingers along the walls, you sense the layers of stone and soil pressed together. Imagine the builders months before winter, men cutting turf blocks, stacking them like bricks, women packing earth into gaps, children hauling stones, laughing amidst the labor. By snow's arrival, the hut stood ready, a structure born of planning and foresight, not a last-minute lean-to. Historians debate the hut's effectiveness. Some argue they were damp, smoky, and unhealthy. Others contend they offered steady warmth, especially if lined with planks or hides. Archaeological remains show hearths blackened with soot, indicating fires burned constantly. But with no chimneys, questions arise about air quality. Likely, people exchanged comfort for survival, lungs blackened, yet hearts beating when spring came. You crouch inside. Timber poles support the low roof, blackened with age. Picture a medieval family gathered here, bodies pressed together, livestock tethered near the door. Sounds of bleating sheep and lowing cows mingle with the fire's hiss and murmured voices. Body heat from humans and animals warms the small space. The air thick, sometimes stifling, yet better than the frozen void outside. One odd Norse practice, burying fish bones beneath the floor. Superstition for fertility and protection, or simple disposal, it remains a curious layer of meaning. Every hut contained not just earth and stone, but memory and belief. Walls held stories as well as warmth. You sit quietly, listening to the storm's muffled echo beyond the walls. Turf absorbs sound, creating a hush that feels almost sacred. Breath echoes faintly. Others embedded small tokens, beads, bits of bone, or carved crosses, into the walls as offerings. Today, it might seem superstitious. For them, it reinforced both the structure and the spirit. As snow pressed against their huts, these charms gave confidence to sleep through the storm. Leaning against the wall, you feel it sway gently. The sensation is unsettling, like standing against a ship's side. It's easy to imagine how terrifying nights must have been, listening to groaning timbers and wondering if the walls would hold. Yet daily life persisted. People cooked, spun wool, sharpened tools, even shared intimacy within these fragile walls. Life was not just survival, it was insistence on living. A 15th-century parish account tells of a storm so severe it toppled dozens of cottages in a single night. Families huddled together in the church nave until the winds passed. Yet, within weeks, villagers returned, rebuilding walls, smearing new clay, and tending their fields. This resilience is evident in every woven rod and lump of frozen daub. Crouching low, you watch snow drift through a small crack near the roof. A fine powder settles on the floor, glittering faintly in firelight. Brushing it aside, you feel the storm's relentless push, yet the shelter endures, creaking like a ship's hull but refusing to break. Oddly, the woven pattern offers comfort. It resembles fabric, a basket, or a fence, reminding us that medieval people saw little separation between house, tool, and handcraft. Skills used for fences or baskets were also used to build walls against winter. Craftsmanship itself was survival. Sounds fill the space, wind whistling through cracks, fire popping, voices sharing stories to distract from the storm. Imagine a grandmother recounting tales of saints and spirits as snow piled outside, her words stitching warmth alongside the fire. In these moments, frail walls were not failures. They were reminders that community was the strongest shelter. Stepping back into the storm, watching the woven hut fade into snow, it becomes clear. These walls stood not only because of timber and clay but because of the will of those who built them. Survival relied on persistence, patched year after year, as stubborn as the people inhabiting these fragile homes. Moving forward, the blizzard still clawing at your back, you come upon a low structure alive with sound. At first, there's only a faint shuffle, a muffled grunt. Then comes the warmth of breath, the scent of hay mixed with musk. You've reached one of the medieval world's most practical survival strategies, sharing shelter with animals. Across Europe, it was common for houses to include a byre, where humans and livestock shared a roof. Archaeological digs in Bavaria and Scandinavia reveal longhouses divided between people and cattle. It wasn't optional, it was necessity. Cows, sheep, and goats radiated heat. In winter, their warmth could mean the difference between life and death. Inside, the air is humid, thick with the scent of dung and wet hides. The straw-covered floor is soft, though damp in patches. This is no noble hall, it's a barn repurposed for survival. Yet here, life takes on a strange intimacy. Families huddle against walls, wrapped in blankets, while cows shift nearby, chickens cluck softly overhead. Heat steams your face, fingers regaining life. Contemporary records show fines for peasants who failed to keep animals indoors, not for cruelty but because lords knew livestock reduced winter mortality. Some medieval medical texts even suggested inhaling cow breath to ease chest ailments. Families pressed close to animals treated each exhale as medicine. A curious, but logical, Solution in a world where human and animal lives were closely intertwined. Scholars debate the conditions. Some claim the air must have been unbearable, ammonia-laden, and smoky. Others point to constant fires, vents, and straw layers that made it manageable. Likely, the truth lies between unpleasant, yet survivable. Listening, you notice a rhythm, creaking beams, shifting hooves, murmured voices. The blizzard outside becomes a muted roar. Children stroke calves' coarse hair, mothers mend clothes by firelight, fathers lean against warm flanks, grateful for seeping heat. Folklore adds a layer of mystery. Some believed cows could see spirits, warding off malevolent forces. A sudden movement could be interpreted as a warning from the unseen. Brushing straw from your cloak, the warmth is undeniable, even if the scent stings. Survival here is stripped of pride, humans and animals together, equal in need. The hut seems alive, every breath a cloud, every motion a reminder that life endures. A chronicler in the Swiss Alps noted peasants living like beasts with beasts, yet their households suffered fewer winter deaths than wealthier stone homes relying solely on fires. Poverty's solutions sometimes outperformed nobility's comforts. Your body warms in the humid air. Stiffness eases, aches soften. You stretch, almost sighing, though the sour odor clings. Comfort is a matter of perspective, you remind yourself. For medieval peasants, their hardships weren't degradation, they were survival strategies passed down through generations. Leaning against the wall, listening to the storm batter the outside and the steady chewing of a cow nearby, you recognize a deeper truth. Survival doesn't prioritize dignity. It values warmth, breath, and the hope of one more dawn. Here, among steaming hides and damp straw, that hope feels tangible. The storm drives you forward, snow lashing like claws across your cheeks, until a faint glimmer of ice catches your eye. At first, it appears to be a frozen field, but soon you realize it is the surface of a river, smooth, solid, and glassy beneath the snow. The current flows silently underneath, invisible yet restless. In the Middle Ages, rivers like this served as roads when bridges were scarce, carrying sleds, wagons, and even herds across their icy surface. Sometimes travelers built temporary shelters directly on the ice. You imagine weary travelers trapped between villages as night falls faster than their steps allow. The frozen river offers the only flat ground for miles. They stack branches, lash sleds together, and pile snow to shield themselves from the wind. Fires burn in shallow pits scraped directly into the ice, flames reflecting in trembling orange patterns. For a fleeting moment, the river itself cradles them. Records from Northern Europe mention such encampments. Pilgrims, merchants, and soldiers sometimes slept on frozen rivers when storms trapped them mid-journey. One 15th-century merchant's journal describes men huddling around a brazier set on planks over ice, their breath mixing with smoke, praying the ice would hold. Here, the river is both road and roof. You crouch, brushing snow from the frozen surface. The ice feels solid but groans faintly beneath your weight, like an ancient creature stirring. Beneath it, black water flows unseen. Your reflection shimmers across tiny cracks, a reminder of the danger below. Cold seeps into your bones as if the earth itself were hollow and hungry. One detail from folklore catches your attention. In certain regions, people scattered salt on the ice before building shelters, believing it would calm river spirits. Salt was valuable, yet they used it as an offering, seeking reassurance where life and death balanced precariously. To modern eyes, it may seem irrational. To them, it was comfort amid uncertainty. Scholars debate the wisdom of these ice shelters. Some suggest the stories exaggerate the risks, while others confirm the practice was frequent. Citing multiple chronicles and sagas. Likely, the truth lies between blizzards create desperation, and desperate people take desperate measures. You envision the shelter. Branches arch overhead as wind shoves them sideways, sparks from a fire drift upward before fading in the cold air. Men pull cloaks tight, backs pressed together, boots braced against the ice. Horses snort nervously, hooves clattering on the slick floor. The sounds are eerie, fire crackling, animals shifting, ice groaning, and beyond it all, the roar of the blizzard. Such a night is not sleep but vigil, every sound a warning. A 14th century chronicle recounts soldiers on a frozen river in Livonia, awaking to find themselves drifting downstream. The ice had fractured silently, carrying them like a raft. They scrambled ashore half-frozen as their shelters collapsed. True or exaggerated, the story illustrates a powerful reality. Nature cannot be tamed. Pressing your palm to the ice, the cold bites sharply, a reminder that beneath this fragile surface lies oblivion. For medieval survivors, every patch of ground, stone, snow, or ice offered potential refuge. If the blizzard struck in the wrong place, they relied on whatever surface was available. Smoke and brine mingle in your imagination as you picture lying on straw spread across the ice, cloak wrapped tight, body trembling at each creak. Sleep is shallow and broken, haunted by the thought of the river reclaiming its surface. Yet if dawn arrives, sunlight glitters across the frozen plain, a reward for taking the risk. You step carefully back toward the bank, snow crunching underfoot. The imagined shelter dissolves into the storm, leaving a ghost of survival strategies remembered in chronicles and sagas. Ahead, the land rises again, rough and snow-covered. For medieval people, every landscape offered both threat and opportunity. Even a frozen river could serve as a roof if trusted. You continue on, carrying the memory of firelight flickering on black ice. Survival sometimes demands daring, even sleeping above water, suspended between storm and current. The storm still claws at you, but after the river's eerie groans, you are grateful for solid ground. Your path follows a ridgeline where wind tears at your cloak. Then you notice something remarkable. A line of woven panels staked into the snow, bending under the blizzard but holding firm. These are hurdles, interlaced wooden fences, portable yet life-saving in winter. Imagine a shepherd on the moors, night descending fast. With no time to build a cottage or pit, he carries hurdles on his pack or sled. Planted at an angle against the wind, they create a pocket of calm air. With enough hurdles, a small camp can form in minutes, shielding humans and animals from the storm. Estate records from Wales and Scotland mention shepherds borrowing hurdles not only for corralling livestock but for building winter shelters. The documents are practical, noting fines for lost panels, but their presence speaks volumes. Woven wood was about endurance. You step closer, brushing frost from the pattern. Willow branches, pliable and strong, are woven between upright stakes. Even frozen, they flex in the wind, creaking but refusing to break. At night, this rhythmic groan would serve as a lullaby born of labor. A 14th century traveler's diary describes a shepherd in the Pennines who built a triangular hurdle house with 3 panels leaning together, covering it with a hide, lighting a tiny fire inside, and sleeping warm enough to survive until morning. Was it comfortable? Hardly. The diary notes that the man's hair smelled of smoke for weeks. Yet in the harsh reality of a blizzard, survival outweighed scent. Historians debate whether such shelters were common or rare improvisations. Some argue that hurdles were too valuable as fencing to risk in storms. Others suggest their portability made them ideal for emergencies. With no physical remains, certainty is impossible. Still, repeated mentions in shepherds' notes, travelers' accounts, and soldiers' journals suggest they were a frequent fallback. You kneel behind one of these panels, and the change is immediate. The storm's roar dulls. The wind's force slackens. Snow still swirls, but you feel less exposed, less hunted. It is remarkable how a few rods of woven wood can alter the environment. Behind you, snow drifts form slowly, rising like a second wall. You can picture medieval wanderers leaning against the hurdles, finally able to breathe without choking on snow. Some traditions even treated hurdles as charms. In rural Ireland, it was said that keeping a hurdle through winter on St. Brigid's Day would protect animals from storms. Farmers carried miniature woven crosses as tokens, believing they embodied the same protective force. Perhaps the repeated, ordered weaving symbolized resilience, human hands holding back chaos. The hurdles creak under the storm. You imagine curling beneath a stretched hide, fire flickering through the lattice. Smoke, damp hide, and scorched willow fill the air. Above, the wind moans like a distant organ, But here you are shielded. Not warm, not comfortable, but shielded. Sometimes that was all medieval people needed. A pause in the storm's fury, a pocket of endurance carved from wood and will. A French military chronicle recounts soldiers dismantling field fences to build shelters during a snowbound siege. The chronicler mocked them as kennels for dogs. Yet those makeshift shelters likely saved more lives than grand tents. The lesson repeats: humility could save you, pride could freeze you to death. As you rise, brushing snow from your cloak, you glance back at the hurdles. Simple weaves of wood, unimpressive to the eye, yet quietly dignified. Survival often relied on the simplest, most portable crafts. The skill of a shepherd in weaving could mean the difference between dawn and death. In the storm's shadow, you've encountered one of history's humblest but most faithful shelters. Moving on, the storm intensifies. Snow lashes sideways, biting into your skin, and each breath feels like shards of glass. Ahead, a faint orange glow flickers. At first, a lantern comes to mind, but it is smoke rising from a low roof, embers spilling through a hole. You have found another type of medieval shelter: smoky huts with central fires, no chimneys, air thick enough to choke. Inside, the difference is immediate. Heat strikes first, sharp and overwhelming. Smoke stings your eyes and fills your lungs. The room is dim, lit by the hearth alone. Blackened beams hang overhead, tar dripping in long stalactites. Low ceilings and dense air swallow coughs. Historical records confirm that chimneys were rare in peasant homes until late medieval centuries. Smoke escaped through thatch holes or roof cracks, sometimes so dense that beams dripped creosote and eyes watered constantly. Yet this smoke also offered benefits. It repelled insects, preserved meat, and added insulation by filling gaps. You sit by the fire, feeling warmth flood your frozen body. Your toes tingle painfully as circulation returns. Imagine medieval families huddled here, pressed together, squinting through haze, grateful for every spark. Folklore even attributes spiritual significance. In parts of Scandinavia, smoke carried prayers. A house without smoke was lifeless. Children learned to read smoke. Thin wisps meant weak fire, thick columns promised endurance. Some superstitions warned against letting smoke drift west, thought to invite storms. Historians debate the health effects. Some argue constant smoke caused chronic coughs, sore eyes, and shortened lifespans. Others counter that peasants acclimated, lungs hardened, and benefits outweighed risks. Archaeology shows blackened beams in preserved cottages, proof of the smoky interiors. Survival demanded endurance, whether tolerable or torturous. You lie back on the hard floor, the rushes crackling faintly beneath you. The smell of burnt wood, damp straw, and sweat is overwhelming, yet your body relaxes. The storm outside is muted. The hearth becomes the world. Children sleep on laps, elders murmur prayers. A pot of stew simmers, its aroma faintly of turnips and onions. Pain and relief coexist. Survival was often just that. A 13th-century traveler from Bohemia described a hut so smoky he felt blind, yet the warmth was irresistible. Entire winters were spent in this twilight haze, eyes watering, clothes and hair steeped in smoke. Walls blackened, as if the storm had seeped inside. No grandeur, no carved hearth, no chimney, just fire, smoke, and survival. Families endured stinging eyes and hacking coughs to stay warm, while weaving baskets, mending tools, telling stories, and waiting for spring. Life went on under haze, showing that endurance isn't comfort, but adaptation. Snow occasionally falls through the smoke hole, hissing on coals, a reminder the storm rages outside. Yet inside walls darkened by soot, safety prevails. Hundreds of winters, generations coughing but alive. You close your eyes, breathing shallowly. The storm howls beyond, but the fire whispers, crackling a lullaby. For all its sting, this smoky hut beats against the cold silence, a heartbeat of survival. And in that moment, you understand why people braved the choking air. It promised the arrival of another dawn. Smoke clings to your cloak as you push back into the blizzard, eyes stinging, lungs burning. Yet the lingering warmth makes the icy gusts hit like a sharp slap. You stumble across the snowfield, vision blurred, until a pale glimmer of hide catches your attention. Stretched over poles, heavy with snow, it quivers under the storm. As you approach, it becomes clear. This is medieval ingenuity. Walls of animal hides, tightly pulled and fastened together, shielded inhabitants from harsh weather. In regions where timber was scarce or walls fragile, people relied on hides. Oxen, reindeer, goats, even dogs in the far north provided not only food and clothing but also building material. Frames of wood or bone could be wrapped in hides, hair side out, forming a crude but effective barrier against wind. Historical records from northern Russia and Scandinavian Sami describe such shelters, dark, pungent, yet surprisingly warm. Frost stiffened the hides, rattling like tiny drums in the wind, but snow and sleet stayed outside. Your gloved hand brushes the frozen surface, rough, rigid, faintly musky beneath the snow. The touch transports you into a peasant's world. Slaughter docks didn't just supply meat, they provided the very walls against which families leaned. Nothing was wasted. Everything was survival. Inside the hide-covered shelter, the atmosphere shifts. Dim light from a small fire filters through, smoke escaping through a high vent. Thinly scraped sections of hide glow like parchment in lantern light. The scent of wet fur and smoke mixes into a pungent reminder of necessity. Travelers' accounts reveal more. A 13th-century missionary in Lapland recorded that reindeer hide tents retained so much warmth that ice melted on the floor, leaving pools of water. To avoid this, people laid branches, moss, or woven mats beneath them. Staying off frozen earth, layering both above and below, was key. Some cultures even rubbed hides with fish oil or tallow before stretching, making them water-resistant. The smell was unpleasant, but drafts and sleet stayed out. Imagine lying in that dim shelter, every breath filled with smoke and oil, every surface sticky, yet safe from the storm. Scholars still debate the prevalence of hide shelters in Central Europe. Some argue they were rare, limited to nomadic groups in the far north. Others point to scattered references suggesting hides were used even in temperate regions, as emergency insulation over broken roofs or doorways. The lack of archaeological evidence leaves the question unresolved, though the reasoning behind the practice is clear. Crouching closer to the fire, you feel heat radiate onto your chilled skin. Outside, the storm presses against the walls, making them bulge and tremble. Each gust sounds like a drumbeat, the shelter pulsing with the wind. You imagine children beneath thick blankets, soothed by the rhythm of the storm against hide-built walls. Folklore adds another layer. Some believed animal spirits lingered in the hides, protecting those who slept beneath. Families resting under oxhide walls might whisper thanks to the animal, treating it as a guardian. Whether superstition or not, it reflects the intimacy of lives literally wrapped in the remains of other creatures. Shifting on the floor, straw crunching underfoot, you notice how quickly warmth gathers in the confined space. Breath clouds the air, walls sweat faint droplets down the stretched hide. Clammy, unpleasant, yet survivable. This paradox repeated constantly, discomfort accepted as the cost of life. A 14th-century hunting manual even recommended carrying a rolled hide while traveling, to be stretched into a quick shelter at night. Knights, better fed and armored than peasants, used the same methods. Under a blizzard, all social ranks leveled. The storm respected only adaptability. Your senses absorb every detail: sour fur, crackling firewood, hides rattling under the wind's assault. Outside, death prowls in white silence. Inside, survival breathes in smoke and musk. You realize how countless winters were endured this way, bodies warmed by walls stitched from beasts they once tended. Closing your eyes briefly, the shelter rocks gently with gusts, a cradle woven from necessity. Medieval survivors understood what you now do. Warmth comes not from comfort alone, but from ingenuity, sacrifice, and the determination to see another morning. The hides cling to your clothes as you step back into the blizzard. The air bites like knives, smoke lingers in your throat. Snow swirls thick enough to obscure the horizon. Still, signs emerge in the white, ash patterns at doorways, salt on thresholds, odd markings scratched into wood. Not all medieval shelter was physical. Sometimes survival was ritual, beliefs meant to hold frost and darkness at bay. In winter villages, chants hummed over fires, charms nailed to beams, whispered invocations at the start of storms. German parish records mention priests blessing cottages before snow, using holy water to bind the cold at doors. Sprigs of evergreen above rafters carried warmth from the last summer Sunday. When walls failed, superstition filled the gaps that stone and straw could not. You enter a hut thick with smoke from burning herbs, juniper and sage curling like phantom hands. A woman crouches by the hearth, scattering salt into the flames while murmuring prayers. Sparks leap higher, snapping as if the salt has teeth. This was not cooking or heating alone, it was defense. Storms were seen as forces with intention, spirits eager to claim the living. Travel diaries note curious customs. In Scandinavia, melted butter was poured on doorsteps during blizzards to appease wind spirits. In the Alps, children bang pots and pans during the first snow to scare away demons. To modern ears, these gestures seem fanciful, yet in medieval minds, they created shelters as real as any wall. Scholars debate the importance of such rituals. Some argue they were mere folklore, almost play. Others insist they were central, binding communities when physical defenses failed. Evidence is scarce, but crouched here by the fire, while salt hisses in the flames, you understand why ritual mattered. It gave people agency when storms stripped away every other control. You inhale the sharp, resinous scent of juniper. It pricks your nose, mingling with the damp smell of hides and straw. Inside the hut, the children sit quietly, eyes wide, listening to the crackle of the fire. Their father mutters an old charm taught by his grandfather, words older than the house itself. Outside, the storm rattles the shutters, snow squealing against the wood, but the family draws strength from the rhythm of the prayer. Here, warmth is more than fire, it is faith layered over fear. One curious detail appears in an English collection of folk remedies. People were told to keep an iron key beneath the hearthstone to lock winter away. Others tied red threads around bedposts as protection against frostbite. The effectiveness of these acts mattered less than the calm they brought during a season that thrived on panic. You lean closer to the fire. Herbs spit and pop, releasing an oily smoke that clings to your skin. For a moment, the air thickens, forming an almost tangible barrier between you and the white fury outside. You sense the power of this illusion. A blizzard is overwhelming and endless, but ritual makes it something negotiable, resistible, even outwitted. The family settles together, shoulders touching, breath mingling in the dim light. The children drift towards sleep, comforted not only by warmth but by the unseen guardians they believe protect them. Outside, the wind howls, but inside, it feels less invincible. Doors are marked, fires blessed, charms spoken. Survival here is no longer just about stone or hide. It is about conviction. Stepping back into the snow, herbs still stinging your throat, you recognize the truth. In medieval winters, the line between superstition and shelter was thin. Sometimes, belief held back despair more firmly than walls of clay or stone. The wind lashes harder as you leave the smoke-filled cottage. Snow drives against your face like sand, reducing the world to white chaos. Through the blur, darker shapes appear on the horizon, low, rounded forms faintly glowing with firelight. Approaching, you realize these are hide tents stretched over frames used by nomadic people who moved with the seasons. In the far north, reindeer herders and other tribes perfected these portable shelters, astonishingly resilient even in medieval times. The construction begins with a frame, long poles planted in a circle and gathered at the top in a cone. Thick hides, stitched with sinew, are draped over the frame and secured with cords. Sometimes bark strips or woven mats fill gaps. From the outside, it appears fragile, fabric over wood, but inside, the space is warm, dark, and communal. Travelers to Lapland and Siberia described entering such tents during storms and finding an interior alive with heat from fires, reindeer breath, and steaming pots of broth. It was another world entirely. You push through a flap into one tent. Instantly, the blizzard fades to a dull moan. Warmth strikes you like a tide. A fire pit glows at the center, smoke funneling through a hole in the top. Hides ripple with each gust, seams creaking but holding. Families sit cross-legged on furs, children play with carved bone toys, elders tend the flames, murmuring stories. The scent of wood smoke, boiled meat, damp leather, and reindeer hides fills the air. A 16th-century missionary noted the smoke hole could be adjusted like a primitive chimney. Though dark and close, the interior was warm enough to shed his outer cloak. These shelters were not crude improvisations. They were refined designs for survival. Historians debate the influence of nomadic architecture on settled medieval communities. Some argue northern peasants borrowed ideas like adjustable vents or layered hides. Others insist the designs evolved independently. Records from the tribes themselves are scarce, leaving the question unresolved, yet the similarities are striking. You sit near the fire, frozen limbs thawing. The soundscape is intimate, crackling flames, melting snow dripping from hides, the steady breathing of tethered reindeer. Someone ladles broth into a wooden bowl, the steam fogging your vision, carrying the aroma of fat and marrow. Each sip pushes warmth through your chest, driving out the cold. Folklore preserves strange beliefs about these tents. Some claimed the hides retained the spirits of the animals, protecting inhabitants. Others said the circular frame mirrored the sky, aligning the shelter with the cosmos. Whether symbolic or not, the design worked. Families endured storms that would have killed the unprepared. Through the smoke hole, snowflakes tumble in, glowing as they catch the firelight before vanishing in steam. The hides rustle, cords groan, but the structure holds. Outside, the storm rages. Inside, life continues. Children giggle, pots bubble, elders hum half-remembered songs. A traveler once marveled at how quickly these shelters could vanish. At dawn, families dismantled poles, rolled hides, and loaded sleds. Within an hour, the camp was gone, leaving only faint circles in the snow. This portability was the genius. Homes that moved with herds, that bent with storms rather than breaking. Leaning back on a folded fur, you marvel at the ingenuity. Shelter here is not stone or timber, it is flexibility. Survival in a medieval blizzard was not resisting nature at all costs but learning to sway with it. The hides ripple in time with the wind, and you understand. This house breathes with the storm, and because it breathes, it endures. The storm drives you into the highlands, where air sharpens and thins. Snow clings to ledges, sculpted into drifts by winds that whistle across the peaks. Your path leads to stone buildings perched on the mountainside, thick walls, narrow slits for windows, a faint bell tower looming above. You have reached a cloister, a fortified monastery where medieval monks built sanctuaries for prayer and survival alike. Inside the cloister, the difference is immediate. Outer walls block the gale, reducing the storm to a steady moan. Snow lies calm in the courtyard. Lanterns flicker against arches, casting warm pools of light on flagstones. Monks in woolen habits shuffle silently, breath visible in the cold air as they move from chapel to dormitory. These walls are more than stone, they are bulwarks against storm and despair. Medieval records show mountain cloisters were built with walls several feet thick, packed with rubble and lime mortar. The result was insulation rivaling modern stone houses. Deep storerooms held salted fish, smoked meat, and casks of ale to last through snowbound months. Here, survival depended not only on faith but on careful design and preparation. These details survive in the account books, which carefully record every barrel and loaf rationed during storms. You enter the refectory, the communal dining hall. The air is warm, carrying the scent of simmering lentils and baking bread. A long fire pit runs down the center, its smoke venting through a stone chimney. Benches line either side, worn smooth over centuries. The monks eat in silence, heads bowed, steam rising from their bowls. Outside, the storm rages, yet here, discipline and careful design create a calm, orderly survival. A curious practice appears in a 14th-century rule book. Monks slept in communal dormitories, beds lined in rows with only thin partitions. This was not only spiritual humility. Shared body heat across dozens of men created a microclimate that softened the bitter cold. Imagine soft snores, rustling straw mattresses, and the faint drip of melting snow from roof tiles. To an outsider, it may seem austere, but to those inside, it provided efficient warmth. Scholars debate how much monasteries served as refuges for nearby villages during storms. Some claim they welcomed travelers and peasants trapped by blizzards. Others suggest they were mostly insular, protecting only monks, rarely admitting outsiders. Likely, the truth varied by region and order. Yet stories persist of shepherds pounding on abbey doors, monks bringing them inside, wrapping them in cloaks, and sharing bread by the fire. You move into the scriptorium, where monks copy manuscripts by candlelight. The scent of wax and parchment fills the room. Windows are shuttered against the wind, though faint drafts flicker the flames. One monk dips his quill into ink, hands steady despite the cold. He writes theology, but perhaps also notes of the weather, recording storm fury for future generations. These fragile pages, preserved in libraries, carry echoes of the winters you imagine. A peculiar detail emerges from monastic animals. Some cloisters kept beehives even in snowy climates, storing them in stone shelters where bees hibernated. Honey served as both food and medicine, applied to wounds or mixed into hot drinks. Picture bees sleeping behind thick walls while monks pray nearby, a glimpse of how every aspect of life was organized for survival. The soundscape here contrasts sharply with peasant huts or hide tents. Instead of coughing children and creaking beams, you hear the steady rhythm of chanting. From the chapel comes a low drone of Latin hymns, rising and falling like waves. The storm outside is muffled by stone, but inside the chant swells, filling the air with calm. For monks, prayer was a shelter, wrapping the soul as stone wrapped the body. You sit near the chapel brazier, watching sparks dance upward. The floor is cold beneath you, yet stillness seeps into your bones. A winter night unfolds in your imagination, villagers, shepherds, and monks kneeling together, listening to chants while snow piles higher against the cloister walls. Survival becomes more than physical, it becomes communal. The storm continues on the mountain, snow drums against shutters, wind rattles the bell tower. Yet inside these thick-walled sanctuaries, humanity has carved a rhythm of endurance, food stored carefully, fires tended, bodies warmed by one another, voices raised in prayer. Shelter is not just stone and mortar, it is ritual, order, and shared resilience. The cloister bells fade into the storm as you press onward into the mountains. The path narrows, cliffs hemming both sides, snow cascading down in sudden bursts. Strange formations appear, long slopes of whiteness poised high above, waiting until the wind shakes them loose. Avalanches. Even the strongest shelter offers little protection in their shadow. In medieval times, huts, barns, and chapels were often built in valleys unaware of avalanche paths. Chronicles from the Swiss Alps record entire hamlets buried in minutes, wooden beams splintered, families trapped beneath tons of ice. One 14th-century chronicle describes a white wave that erased every sound except its roar. Survivors rebuilt, only to face the same fate years later. Geography did not always yield to human judgment. You pause, scanning the slopes above. Silence presses, heavier than the wind. Snow shifts faintly, every crack of ice feels like a warning. To medieval villagers, avalanche zones were mysterious. Some believed avalanches were the wrath of spirits disturbed by noise. Alpine folklore still warns against loud voices in the mountains during winter. Superstition or not, vibration can indeed trigger slides. Inside a mountain hut, danger was constant. Families huddled around the fire, listening to the deep rumble approaching. Walls shook, roofs groaned, snow slammed down with unstoppable force. Archaeological digs reveal collapsed structures preserved beneath old avalanche layers, timbers twisted, hearthstones cracked. Proof that some storms were unsurvivable, no matter the care in building. Yet people adapted. Tyrol records describe villagers building avalanche barriers, wooden fences or stone walls upslope to slow snow's momentum. Effectiveness is uncertain, but the act shows awareness of the looming threat. Interestingly, a 15th-century traveler noted monks ringing bells during heavy snow, believing vibrations could prevent larger avalanches. Historians debate whether this worked, but it gave villagers a sense of preparedness, a signal that danger approached. You imagine yourself inside such a hut, snow piled against walls, fire flickering low. The mountain groans outside. Inside, tension thickens the air. Every crack in the ice, every gust of wind feels threatening. Children cling to mothers. Fathers grip tools useless against tons of snow. Shelter is paradoxical, strong against wind and cold, fragile against the mountain. Local law even encouraged planting fir trees in rows upslope from huts, believing roots would hold snow in place. Whether superstition or strategy, it reflects human effort to shape the land for survival. Some of these tree belts still stand today, silent guardians born of medieval fear. The atmosphere in avalanche country is stark. Unlike smoky huts or animal-filled barns, these shelters are shadowed by dread. Sweat mingles with smoke and straw. Conversations are hushed, movements careful, as if even laughter might provoke disaster. You crouch beneath a beam, listening. Snow hisses down the slope in a small, harmless slide, but the sound lingers, a reminder of fragility. For medieval people, surviving a blizzard was never only about cold. It was about choosing where to build, where to rest, where to risk the night. And yet, people stayed. They rebuilt crushed huts, re-roofed barns, raised walls again and again. Land was precious, grazing limited, families had little choice, but human resilience endured. Storms could take everything, yet leaving the mountain was unthinkable. Their stubbornness acted as its own kind of shelter, unseen, yet unyielding. As you step out of the hut and move down the valley, that thought follows you. Survival often meant living knowingly in danger, trusting that dawn would come. The blizzard rages, but the memory of those who built homes beneath avalanches remains, quiet, steadfast, and profoundly human. The valley narrows, the mountains pressing close, until a cluster of wooden structures clings to the slope. Their walls are strong but plain, roofs steeply pitched to shed snow. Inside, the air smells of smoke and livestock. Yet what draws your attention isn't the buildings themselves, it's how people sleep, raised on wooden platforms above the floor. A small adjustment, but one that made a real difference when cold stone threatened to steal body heat. Medieval sources sometimes mention these platforms. In Northern Europe, they were called sangebank or sleeping benches, appearing in sagas and household records. Archaeological remains of Norwegian longhouses show stone hearths with wooden ledges nearby, indicating families slept above the cold, damp ground. Even in peasant huts, beds or bunks were elevated on simple frames, straw piled thick for insulation. It wasn't luxury, just practicality. Heat rises, cold sinks. Climbing a few feet was enough to escape the worst chill. You step onto one of the platforms. The wood creaks beneath your weight, worn smooth by countless sleepers before you. The straw rustles, faintly grassy, even in winter. Lying down, you immediately feel the difference. The air is warmer here. Smoke drifts across your face, and the floor's chill fades. It is still cold, your breath fogs, but it is manageable. Written accounts describe families sleeping together on these raised beds. Parents, children, even grandparents pressed shoulder to shoulder, their shared warmth creating a barrier against frost. Sometimes livestock nestled below, adding heat from beneath. You can picture it. A room alive with quiet breathing, occasional coughs, the red glow of embers dancing on beams. Privacy was scarce, but safety mattered more than modesty. One 15th-century Danish inventory mentions carved wooden bedboxes with sliding doors, small chambers where sleepers enclosed themselves, trapping warmth. Folklore suggests these beds kept evil spirits at bay, as if the wood shielded against both drafts and nightmares. The design spread slowly. A few examples survive in museums today, darkened by centuries of use. Scholars debate how common these platforms were. Some say they were luxuries for wealthier peasants, others argue they were widespread in cold regions, built with any available timber. Likely, geography determined prevalence. The Alps and Scandinavia show clearer evidence, England and France less so. Yet the principle was universal. Warmth could be gained by sleeping above the cold. You roll onto your side, feeling the straw prick through your cloak. Its earthy, faintly sour scent is strangely comforting. Beneath, the floor is dark and cold, a reminder of what you've escaped. Smoke drifts above, blackening beams. This isn't modern comfort, but it is protection, which is all you need. An Icelandic saga recounts warriors so tightly packed on sleeping benches that their beards froze together overnight. The image makes you smile, grizzled men, waking in confusion, tugging at each other's faces. Humorous, yes, but it shows how intimacy and shared warmth were survival tools. Storms eliminated distance, bodies became insulation, closeness a weapon against the cold. You imagine the sounds, wood creaking as sleepers shift, wind hissing outside, snow sliding from roofs. The fire crackles low, dimming, yet the bed holds warmth. Children whimper softly, soothed by a mother. An old man mutters prayers. The rhythm of survival hums steadily. The raised bed is more than furniture. It's a philosophy. Survival relies not on conquering the storm, but on small adjustments. A foot higher, a thicker wall, a shared bed. The medieval world had limited resources, but it was rich in ingenuity, and these simple platforms prove it. Outside, the blizzard rages, indifferent. But here, on this wooden bench, you feel a fragile pocket of warmth, carved from timber and straw. In that pocket, you understand medieval families endured. They didn't need luxury, only a place where the cold could not fully reach. Rising from the platform, the wood creaks, brushing straw from your cloak. Outside, the storm has eased slightly, though wind snakes through every gap like a restless ghost. You walk across the courtyard, snow crunching, until the scent of hay reaches you, sweet, musty, cutting through the cold. Pulling open a loft door, you see another survival tactic, burrowing into hay for warmth. Simple, almost laughable. Hay is for animals, not people, but for villagers, farmers, and shepherds trapped by storms, it became a mattress, blanket, and lifeline. Parish records from England note families sleeping in barns during harsh winters. Scandinavian travelers describe barns doubling as inns when roads were blocked. Archaeological remains from the 12th to 13th centuries show raised lofts, used for hay and perfect for sleeping above livestock. You climb the frost-coated ladder, plunging your hands into the hay. It pricks, yet feels inviting. Warmth comes immediately. Hay traps air, slowing heat loss. Burrow into it, and your body creates a cozy cocoon. Children instinctively dive in, giggling. Adults do the same, driven by necessity. Folklore adds that hay harvested at midsummer held a fragment of the sun, bringing health to those who slept in it. Farmers believed calves placed in the first hay thrived, and humans sometimes applied the same logic. Lying in golden-smelling hay, the illusion feels convincing. Scholars caution, damp hay could ferment or smolder, infestations were possible. Risky, yes, but preferable to freezing outdoors. Survival rarely offered perfect choices. You settle deeper into the pile. The hay scratches your face, pokes through your cloak, leaving tiny cuts on your wrists. Yet warmth blooms around you. The scent overwhelms, dry grass, dust, and the faint musk of animals below. You hear them shifting, hooves clattering, warm breath rising in clouds. The combination of livestock heat and hay insulation forms a bubble of life amid the storm. One curious tale comes from a 14th century French village. A family trapped in a barn during a 3-day blizzard reportedly sang songs each night while buried in hay. Their voices, muffled but cheerful, gave neighbors the impression that the barn itself was singing. True or not, the story captures an essential truth. Hofts were not just shelters against cold, they were spaces of camaraderie, where songs and stories kept despair at bay just as effectively as the hay kept frost out. The soundscape inside is gentler than in other shelters. Instead of screaming wind or rattling hides, you hear the steady rustle of hay as bodies shift, the occasional snort of cattle below, and the soft drip of melted snow from the roof beams. The loft feels like a rough but protective nest. Children tumble into the hay, giggling, the itch forgotten in the delight of play. Nearby, parents lie exhausted, yet comforted as warmth seeps back into their bones. Outside, the storm rages, but inside, the family survives, huddled among the same fodder that will feed their animals all season. Human and beast alike rely on these golden stalks, a reminder that in medieval winters, survival often meant sharing resources. As you shift deeper, dust rises, making you sneeze. The echo fades into the storm's muted roar. You cough, laugh quietly at yourself, and settle again, marveling that something as simple as dried grass could be the difference between life and death. The hay rustles like a lullaby as your eyes close. Snow patters above, but within this fragrant cocoon, you understand what countless peasants, shepherds, and travelers discovered. Warmth often lies in the simplest, scratchiest places. Coughing, you crawl out of the hoft, dust on your nose, straw scratching your wrists. The storm greets you with icy force. Snow swirls thickly, turning the world into chalk. Ahead, a hut is half buried, its doors sealed by snow and ice. Its wooden frame is visible, but the entrance is a solid wall. In that moment, another danger becomes clear. Medieval people could be snowed in so completely that their shelters became prisons. Records from alpine villages and northern plains describe winters so harsh that doors froze shut overnight. Families awoke trapped, sometimes digging tunnels from loft windows or waiting for neighbors with shovels. One 15th-century Austrian account describes a parish priest visiting cottages where people had not emerged for weeks, relying on stored food and livestock heat until thaw. Surviving inside was possible, but claustrophobic. You brush snow from the doorway. The ice is solid. With effort, you pry it aside and squeeze through a narrow gap. Inside, the air is thick and still. Darkness dominates, with only a faint glow from smoldering embers. The family startles at your arrival. Their faces are pale, eyes tired, yet they are alive. The door may be sealed, but life persists. The first thing you notice is the smell, heavy and stale, a mix of smoke, sweat, and damp wool. Without fresh air, the atmosphere feels nearly suffocating, but it is warm. Packed snow around the walls insulates, keeping the bitter wind out. It is like a cave that preserves life. Travelers' tales reveal that villagers sometimes welcomed this accidental insulation. Once doors were sealed, no drafts could enter. Families huddled, rationed food, and treated the snow as an ally. Still, risks were real. Fires consumed oxygen quickly, so flames were kept low or extinguished entirely. Candlelight cast faint shadows across soot-dark walls. Silence was broken only by coughing, whispering, or the occasional creak of a roof burdened by snow. A curious superstition suggested that marking a sealed door with a soot cross would keep snow from pressing harder. Protective charm or psychological comfort, the ritual hints at the desperation of those trapped inside. Children were warned not to cry too loudly, lest the storm hear and bury them deeper. Scholars debate whether these snow prison winters were exaggerated, yet written records repeat the theme enough to suggest truth. In the harshest winters, households sometimes spent weeks without stepping outside. You sit on a low bench, feeling the weight of silence. The family moves slowly around you, wrapped in layers of wool, cloaks stiff with frost. A girl pokes the fire with a stick, coaxing sparks. Her hands are raw and red. A boy gnaws on a crust of bread so hard it cracks like stone. Their mother ladles thin cabbage broth into wooden bowls, steam filling the air. There is no joy, only the routine of survival. Yet signs of adaptation remain. A clay lamp soaked in animal fat gives faint light without consuming precious oxygen. Dried herbs hang in the corner, for food and believed protection from sickness. Strips of meat above the hearth dry in smoke, preserved for later. Life is reduced to essentials: breath, warmth, food. A Swiss folktale recounts a family trapped for a long winter who sang hymns daily. Neighbors digging them out weeks later swore they could faintly hear the songs echoing from the snow. True or not, it reflects the psychological power of ritual when walls of snow press down. You close your eyes, imagining confinement for days or weeks. No horizon, no sky, only the faint glow of a fire. The storm may rage or have already passed. Time blurs, the world shrinks to a single room. Perhaps this explains why storytelling, song, and prayer thrived in such winters. Without them, madness could arrive faster than frost. Finally, you push back through the narrow gap. Snow tumbles onto your shoulders. The cold air, sharp and bitter, feels like freedom after the stillness inside. You breathe deeply, coughing, grateful for the vastness above. Behind you, the hut remains sealed, a small cocoon where life persists against crushing odds. You realize a profound truth: survival in medieval winters was not always about escaping snow. Sometimes it meant surrendering to it, letting it cover you like a blanket, trusting that spring would come. You trudge onward, boots crunching in deep snow, until the faint roar of waves reaches your ears. The sea surprises you. Amid the blizzard, the air tastes briny and sharp, the scent of salt cutting through frozen wind. Ahead, low huts rise from the shoreline, their rough frames patched with driftwood. These coastal shelters rely on tides rather than forests or fields. For medieval fishing villages, driftwood was treasure. Timber was scarce along barren coasts, and storms often destroyed what little could be collected, yet the sea offered its own supply: broken masts, splintered planks, and drifting tree trunks. Villagers eagerly pulled these from the water, dragging them above the tide line to dry and shape into walls, roofs, and frames. Norse sagas and Anglo-Saxon chronicles both describe driftwood huts and even boats turned upside down to serve as shelters. The sea could destroy, but it could also provide. You approach one such hut. Its walls lean unevenly, warped from months in salt water, yet held together with rope and moss. Seaweed clings to the edges, stiff and brown. Snow weighs down the sagging roof, but it stands firm. Opening the door, the air hits you with the scent of brine, fish, tar, and smoke. Inside, dim light from a single fire glows red. Nets hang above, stiff with frost, while bundles of reeds line the floor as bedding. Coastal records note one unusual practice: mixing seaweed into thatch. It might seem odd, but dried kelp made surprisingly strong fibers, and its salt content helped prevent rot. Archaeologists excavating island huts have even found walls stuffed with seaweed as insulation. Imagine lying down to sleep, the sharp scent of kelp filling your nose, carrying the ocean's persistence into your bones. Historians debate the effectiveness of these materials. Some claim driftwood was brittle, seaweed damp, and huts too porous for harsh winters. Others point to centuries of habitation in Shetland, Orkney, and Iceland as proof that these shelters worked, if imperfectly. Perhaps survival relied less on perfection and more on persistence. Patch a wall, replace a plank, stuff in more moss, repeat until spring. Sitting near the hearth, you hear the faint roar of the sea blending with the storm outside. The fire hisses as brine-soaked logs burn. The room smells of smoked fish, pungent but satisfying. A family occupies the space: a fisherman mending nets, children curled under furs, and a woman stirring a pot of broth faintly scented with herring. The air is humid with salt but warm. Here, life continues at the edge of land and sea. An Icelandic saga recounts a family that allegedly built a winter hut entirely from whale ribs. The bones arched overhead like a cathedral, hides stretched between them. Fact or myth, the story illustrates coastal ingenuity. Anything washed ashore, shipwrecked timbers, whale bones, even shell piles, became shelter. In storms, these ocean gifts were protection. Running your hand along a warped wall, the slick, salt-stiffened wood reminds you these huts were temporary. They bent, swayed, failed, and were rebuilt. Resilience lay not in the material, but in the determination to lash driftwood together, no matter how often storms tore it apart. Outside, gulls cry and waves crash against rocks. Inside, the fire crackles, voices murmur, creating a fragile cocoon. For a moment, it feels as though the sea itself holds the hut steady through the blizzard. Lying on reed mats, the salty scent fills your lungs. Heat from the fire mixes with damp air, sticky and clinging. Comfort is modest, but survivable, and for coastal families, that was enough. Stepping outside, the blizzard rages, yet the crooked hut lingers in your mind. Driftwood, seaweed, bones, rope, scavenged and transformed into shelter. For medieval people on the edges of the world, Survival meant making refuge from whatever washed ashore. As you move inland, the storm thickens. Shapes emerge from the haze, gabled buildings huddled together, light spilling through windows. The smell of ale, wood smoke, and roasted meat drifts through the snow. Relief floods you. You've reached one of the few true havens for medieval travelers: the inn, alehouse, or hostel. Inside, the world changes instantly. Noise hits you: laughter, shouting, scraping benches, clattering mugs. Heat and smoke fill the air. Compared to the storm outside, it feels like paradise. In the Middle Ages, communal shelters were vital. Monasteries offered hospitality, but inns sustained trade routes, river crossings, and markets. Chronicles describe travelers, merchants, and pilgrims crowded into these spaces, bedding wherever possible during storms. Floors are strewn with damp rushes. The central hearth roars, smoke venting fitfully above. Roasting pork fills the air, making your stomach ache. Men in wool cloaks gamble and shout, while pilgrims kneel near a wall, rosaries in hand, trying to ignore the chaos. By the 14th century, records show innkeepers could be fined for refusing travelers in dangerous weather. Hospitality was a legal and social obligation. During blizzards, halls could triple in occupancy, with strangers shoulder to shoulder for warmth. You find a corner near the fire. Heat revives your frozen fingers. Around you, the hall vibrates with sound. Tankards clink, dogs bark, children cry, and a minstrel's rhythm fills the room. Outside, the storm rumbles faintly against thick timber walls. Travelers left marks on beams, antlers, or ship timbers as charms against winter spirits. One English tale claims a horseshoe above the door kept blizzards at bay. Whether superstition or clever reassurance, it comforted those inside. Historians debate the comfort of these inns. Some describe lively, warm refuges bustling with cheer. Others report filthy, smoky, flea-infested halls. Both are likely true, depending on the inn and keeper. Archaeological excavations reveal layers of straw, broken pottery, and bones, evidence of both sustenance and squalor. Survival was guaranteed, comfort optional. You glance around, a merchant disputes prices with the innkeeper, a minstrel sings, shepherds with snow-dusted cloaks sleep on the floor. The room smells of ale, sweat, meat, and smoke. Though harsh, it is alive. The storm rages outside, yet humanity refuses to be silent. A curious note from a 15th-century French innkeeper's ledger records 3 pennies for straw and 5 pennies for repairing a bench broken during a quarrel. It captures the essence of these inns: messy, loud, sometimes violent, but vital. People argued, drank heavily, even fought, but they survived the night, and that was enough. You imagine lying among strangers, rushes rustling beneath your cloak. Feet press against your side, an elbow nudges you, yet warmth grows in the press of bodies. The fire crackles low, casting dancing shadows on smoke-darkened beams. Snow thuds on the roof above, but the stout timbers hold. There's a strange comfort in the chaos. Unlike the silence of a snow cave or a sealed hut, here the noise is reassurance. Every shout, laugh, and snore proves life pushes back against the storm. You let the sounds wash over you, closing your eyes. Sleep may be light, stirred by quarrels or barking dogs, but at least it comes without fear of freezing. In that moment, you understand why medieval inns and alehouses mattered. They were more than buildings. They were the collective hearth of the road, where strangers became companions, sharing warmth from fire and each other. In a world ruled by storms, nothing was more powerful than a roof, a fire, and voices refusing to fall silent. The alehouse's noise lingers as you step back into the storm. Compared to its cozy warmth, the silence outside feels deafening, snow swallowing every sound except your breath. Your path climbs uphill, and soon the outline of stone towers pierces the white haze. Massive walls loom above, black against drifting snow, arrow slits glowing faintly with torchlight. You've reached a castle, one of the few shelters where winter storms could feel almost luxurious compared to peasant life. Inside the gates, the courtyard bustles despite the weather. Servants scurry with firewood, cloaks whipped by the wind. Soldiers stamp their feet, breath rising in clouds. Horses nicker nervously in stables, their flanks steaming. The storm rattles the battlements, but thick stone walls seem indifferent. Step into the kitchens, and warmth hits like a tide. Fires roar in huge hearths. Spits creak as boars turn slowly, while the scent of roasting meat and spices fills the cavernous room. In castles, kitchens were the winter heart. Outer chambers could be freezing, yet the kitchen always had heat. Servants, cooks, and guards lingered there, soaking warmth before braving colder halls. Archaeological remains in places like Durham and Cusey reveal hearths large enough to roast entire oxen, chimneys blackened with soot. You stand near one fire, blaze fierce enough to singe your cheeks. Sparks leap into the smoke hole. Copper pots hang from hooks, steam curling in fragrant clouds. Noise is constant, ladles clanging, fat hissing, cooks calling orders. This is not the hush of a peasant hut. It is organized chaos, abundant and comforting. Medieval chroniclers noted that castle kitchens made men forget storms, the fire devouring the wind. Indeed, inside, blizzards seemed distant rather than threatening. Household records show that during harsh winters, castle kitchens never went dark. Fires burned day and night, not just for cooking, but to keep walls from freezing. Servants slept on benches, guards napped near ovens, children curled in corners, all soothed by the hearth's roar. Scholars debate how warm castles truly were. Some argue that beyond kitchens and great halls, rooms remained frigid. Archaeology confirms fireplaces were limited to certain chambers, leaving most people shivering under wool and furs. Others suggest tapestries, carpets, and strategically placed braziers made interiors more comfortable. The reality likely varied, blazing kitchens and warm halls, yet drafty corridors. In the great hall, vast and echoing, a fire burns in an enormous hearth. Logs crackle, banners hang above. Nobles at the high table sip spiced wine, cloaked in velvet and fur. Servants bustle below, travelers cluster near flames. The air is alive with warmth and chatter, a stark contrast to icy silence outside. Survival here feels celebratory. Feast replaces famine, song replaces stillness. Yet even in luxury, the storm rages beyond stone walls. Privilege meant insulation from nature, not escape from it. A 13th-century visitor to a Norman keep noted nobles carrying hand braziers, small pans of coals, from room to room. Imagine aristocrats, wrapped in furs, holding glowing bowls like lanterns against drafts. Even the mighty bowed to winter. The soundscape here is grander than a peasant hut, harps and lutes echo, mingling with fire crackle. Roasted venison, cinnamon, cloves, and wine fill the air. For someone half frozen, the abundance is almost overwhelming. Yet beneath luxury lies the same truth found in every shelter: fire, walls, closeness. Near the hearth, warmth seeps into your limbs. Contrast is clear. Peasants burrow in hay, huts choke with smoke, castles blaze and nobles feast. All exist under the same storm, all rely on the fragile miracle of warmth. You step back into the courtyard, the castle looming behind, fires blazing, a stone fortress against the storm. In medieval winters, shelter was survival, but also hierarchy carved in architecture. For peasants, straw and smoke. For lords, stone and spice. For both, a thin line keeping death outside. The castle fades into the storm as you descend toward the valley. The blizzard lashes, snow drifting like waves pressing against reeds. Shapes emerge, half buried in frost, low, rounded earth mounds with faint smoke. You found another ancient shelter, the sod house. Crafted where timber was scarce, stacked earth blocks bound by roots formed walls resisting wind and cold. Archaeological digs in northern Europe reveal foundations of turf-built homes that date back centuries, still visible in places like Iceland and the Scottish Isles. In medieval winters, these sod walls were more than insulation, they were part of people's identity, tying them closely to the land. You push through the snow to a mound and brush the entrance clear. The door is low, forcing you to crouch. Inside, the world changes instantly. It's dark and tight, yet warm and steady. The thick earth walls hold in the fire's heat, muffling the storm outside. The scent is earthy, a mix of damp soil, smoke, and wool. Low beams line the ceiling, and furs hang on the walls, adding more warmth. The contrast is striking. Outside, the wind shrieks. Inside, only the quiet crackle of fire and murmured voices. Families sit on benches built into the walls, their faces glowing red in the firelight. Children play with carved wooden toys on the packed dirt floor. An old woman spins wool, the spindle turning softly. The air is smoky but comforting. It feels as if the earth itself is holding you, wrapping around your shivering body. A 13th-century Icelandic saga describes a hall where the walls were warm as flesh. A poetic exaggeration, perhaps, but grounded in truth. Turf houses retained heat far better than stone or wood. Snow piled atop the roofs added insulation, turning them into snug burrows. From the outside, they appeared humble, but inside, they were remarkably efficient. One unusual practice recorded in Norse folklore involved sprinkling milk on sod walls during storms, giving thanks to land spirits for protection. The ritual blended survival with reverence. These homes were not just built from earth but were alive with spirit. Scholars debate how literally such customs were followed, yet the story's persistence hints at deep cultural meaning. Historians continue to discuss how widespread turf houses were outside Iceland and the Isles. Some argue they were rare in mainland Europe, used only in treeless regions. Others suggest they were more common but left fewer traces as the earth reclaimed them. What is undeniable is their effectiveness. Anyone who has stepped inside during a storm knows the difference between the chill of stone and the embrace of sod. By the fire, warmth seeps into your bones. The walls muffle the storm so completely that you almost forget the blizzard outside. The sensation is strange, almost womb-like, as if reborn in the earth. Your eyelids grow heavy, soothed by the fire's crackle and the earthy scent of turf. An Icelandic law code even mentions fines for damaging another's turf, even for simple repairs. Turf was valuable, protected like timber elsewhere. Families guarded it fiercely, knowing shelter depended on access to sod. Survival relied not on abstract wealth but on the right to cut earth. Opening your eyes again, you see shadows flicker across walls, highlighting packed grass and soil. The air tastes smoky and damp but remains bearable. Children sleep on their parents' laps, faces peaceful. Outside, the storm has been reduced to a faint whisper. The sod house is not grand or beautiful, but profoundly secure. Its walls do not shake, hides do not rattle, and snow cannot bury what is already part of the ground. The design's simplicity ensured safety. As you step back outside, the mounds are nearly invisible beneath snow, chimneys faintly smoking. They seem less like houses than part of the land itself. Perhaps this is the secret: to survive winter, not by fighting it, but by sinking into the earth until spring returns. The sod huts fade behind you as snow drifts over their walls. You continue forward, the storm thick and blinding. Your footsteps crunch over frozen ground, and then you hear it, the faint tinkling of bells and the steady thud of hooves. Shapes emerge from the white, pack horses loaded with goods, cloaks whipping behind riders. You have stumbled upon a caravan caught in the blizzard. Here, you see another survival strategy, turning wagons into makeshift shelters or clustering travelers together to share warmth. Picture the scene: wagons arranged in a circle, their wooden sides shielding against the wind. Hides and canvas form a canopy, though snow sags heavily. Fires burn at the center, smoke rising through gaps, sparks dancing into the storm. Merchants, pilgrims, and soldiers huddle together, cloaks wrapped tightly, faces raw from cold. Snow piling against the wagon walls adds extra insulation. Medieval trade records confirm this practice. Hanseatic merchants traveling northern Europe describe camping in wagon forts during winter nights. Pilgrims' diaries report similar arrangements on roads to Santiago. These circles served two purposes: protection from weather and from bandits. A ring of wagons was a wall of wood against multiple dangers. You climb into one wagon, brushing snow from its planks. Inside, the smell of wet wood, leather, and grain sacks is strong. Boards creak under your weight. A blanket covers the entrance, trapping some of the fire's warmth. It is cramped but warmer than the storm outside. You imagine families curled together, children pressed between cloth bales or sacks of wheat, parents whispering reassurances as the blizzard rages beyond. A pilgrim's journal notes that travelers sometimes spread fresh-cut pine boughs across the snow within the wagon circle, creating a springy, insulated floor. The scent of pine filled the air, a rare comfort in a harsh night. Scholars debate whether wagon camps were common among peasants or mainly used by long-distance traders. Some argue only the wealthy could afford carts, others suggest small groups might borrow wagons when needed. Sings softly, a soldier sharpens his knife. Dogs bark at the edges. The activity is restless but necessary, providing warmth, vigilance, and warning. A peculiar superstition also survives. Tying red cloth to a wagon will supposedly confuse the storm, preventing snow from piling too high. Whether charm or coincidence, red scraps appear in caravan records. Perhaps it was simply a way to mark wagons in the endless white. The air inside the wagon circle is thick with human presence. Steam rises from breath, mingling in a cloud, mixing with the scent of damp wool, wet leather boots, and the acrid smoke of the fire. It is far from pleasant, yet the warmth is undeniable. In a storm where isolation meant death, togetherness becomes the only salvation. You imagine lying beside the fire, pressed against strangers. A horse snorts nearby, radiating heat. A child whimpers, soothed by the low murmur of voices. Snow piles high against the wagons, muffling the outside world until the camp feels half buried. Inside, life is rough, smelly, noisy, yet undeniably alive. A Flemish merchant once recounted waking in such a camp to find the snow had sealed every gap so completely that the wagons resembled a fortress. He wrote, "The storm built our walls better than we did." Nature became both enemy and ally, smothering us while insulating us. You lean back, letting the fire's glow soak into your bones. The wagon circle creaks in the wind, ropes straining, hides flapping. The storm roars outside, but here, shielded by wood and proximity, you sense the steady rhythm of survival. The camp mirrors medieval life itself, imperfect, improvised, fragile, yet held together by cooperation. No one survives alone. The wagons, fire, and voices weave a net strong enough to carry everyone to another dawn. Pushing on, your boots crunch over ice-crusted snow, breath vanishing immediately in the gale. After hours, shapes appear like small hills. Closer inspection reveals deliberate structures, stone cans and half-buried shelters carved into cliffs. These cliffside refuges were built by medieval shepherds and travelers, who cut into mountainsides or stacked stones beneath natural overhangs to create crude but lasting shelters. You approach one, its entrance a low arch half hidden by snow. The rough black stones are fitted without mortar, gaps stuffed with moss and frozen clay for insulation. A faint orange glow leaks from within. Inside, the storm is muffled. The air is smoky and heavy, yet warmer. A shallow fire pit reflects light across damp stone walls. Water drips from the ceiling, hissing as it hits the coals. Families huddle on mats of reeds and hides, pressed against the back wall to avoid the draft. Faces glow red in the firelight, eyes half closed with exhaustion. Evidence of such shelters persists across Europe. Archaeological surveys in the Alps and Pyrenees show shallow caves with low stone walls and centuries-old soot marks. Chronicles describe snow huts built against cliffs where herders trapped by storms piled stones, branches, and hides to create life-saving shelters. These were temporary refuges, made in hours, abandoned once skies cleared. You run your hand over the wall. Rough, cold, solid. Unlike wooden huts or hide tents, stone does not shiver in the wind. The smell is earthy, damp, mixed with smoke. Each drop of water sounds amplified in the silence, every hiss from the fire a reminder of the storm's reach. Yet behind stone, you feel safer than in days. A shepherd once told of men singing loudly in such shelters, believing echoes in the rocks could scare away storm spirits. Your own breath seems to bounce back, amplified. Some suggest these echoes inspired folk tales of mountain voices or ghostly warnings carried on the wind. Historians debate whether cliffside shelters were common or rare improvisations. Evidence of soot-blackened caves supports frequent use, while others claim many marks are hunting camps, not blizzard refuges. Either way, the logic is clear. When snow hunts you, stone is the best shield. You sit near the fire, listening. Outside, the storm is a low, steady roar, like distant waves. Inside, the crackle of flames dominates, accompanied by the shuffle of tired bodies. A child coughs softly, curling deeper into a blanket. Stone, warmed by fire, radiates heat, keeping the chill at bay. There is no grandeur, no feasting or music, only survival. Burning pine needles scent the air, smoke curling toward a crude vent. Sparks leap briefly, illuminating the wet stone ceiling before vanishing. Alpine folklore warns never to sleep nearest the entrance. Storm spirits would drag souls into the blizzard. Whether superstition or strategy, it served a practical purpose, placing the most vulnerable deeper inside, shielded by others. Even fear became survival. You imagine lying on the reed mats, stone wall cold but reassuring. The shelter is crowded, every space used. Outside, the storm rages, snow piling higher, but the stones stand firm. In this borrowed hollow, people endure. You close your eyes, thinking of centuries of storms these walls have seen, generations huddled in the same glow. Their voices merge with yours in echoes layered across time. The storm may feel eternal, but so is the instinct to carve refuge from the land. One thought remains: the strongest shelter is sometimes not built but discovered in the bones of the earth. Stone shows no mercy, but its endurance is enough for those who trust it. Leaving the cliffside hollow, wet stone clinging to your cloak, the storm drives you onto a wide plain where snow sweeps endlessly. For a moment, it feels like walking on the bottom of the sky. Then shapes rise, long low mounds in careful rows. These are turf longhouses used across Iceland, Greenland, and Scandinavia. Unlike temporary shelters, these were entire communities built to withstand months of deadly blizzards. The narrow entrance forces you to stoop or crawl, trapping cold air in the tunnel to keep the main hall warmer. Push through the hide flap, and suddenly you are in a world of flickering firelight and earthy warmth. Thick walls of turf and stone, cut from the surrounding landscape, are stacked several feet deep. Timber framing and additional turf layers on the roof create insulation so dense that snow on top only adds warmth. The hall stretches long and dimly lit. A fire glows in the central hearth, smoke curling slowly toward roof vents. Benches line the walls, piled with furs and straw. Families sit shoulder to shoulder, their faces warm in the firelight. The air is dense with smell: peat smoke, sweat, wool, and cooking broth. It clings to everything, stinging the eyes. Yet inside, the hall feels alive compared to the empty, howling cold outside. Norse sagas describe such halls vividly. Warriors drank near the hearth while snow buried the land. Farmers and fishermen sang songs to pass long winter nights. These spaces were more than shelters, they were social engines, housing entire households, sometimes dozens, under one roof. A visitor once described them as inverted ships, timber frames resembling vessels carrying people across a sea of snow. Archaeology reveals small side rooms in some longhouses used to shelter animals. Their warmth helped heat the main hall. Imagine goats softly shifting in shadows, cows moving on straw, their breath mingling with the hearth smoke. The combination of animals, fire, and people created a microclimate stable even as blizzards raged outside. Scholars debate the comfort of these halls. Some say they were dark, smoky, and suffocating, breeding illness during long winters. Others argue they were cleverly adapted, cozy in their own way, with social bonds strengthened by enforced closeness. Likely both are true. Life was harsh, but survival was achievable, and that was the only measure that mattered. You sit on a bench, fur soft beneath you, straw pricking lightly. The fire crackles, orange light dancing across soot-dark rafters. Children play with carved toys. An elder sharpens a knife with rhythmic, calm strokes. A woman stirs a pot, fish and onion aromas rising in thick steam. Voices hum low conversation, bursts of laughter, and strains of song threading through smoky air. Greenlandic folklore notes that during long storms, families entertain themselves with riddles and storytelling contests lasting through the night. Winners earned extra ale or dried meat. Imagining riddles exchanged as snow piled against turf walls shows that survival was not only physical, it required mental endurance. Stories and games became fuel for resilience. The sounds blend together, the wind muted by sod, peat hissing on the fire, animals bleating softly, voices rising and falling. It feels like a great wooden ship cutting through stormy seas, which, in a way, these longhouses were, ships for winter, carrying people towards spring. You lean against the wall, warmed by turf soaked with the fire's heat. Your cloak smells of smoke, but you don't mind. The blizzard outside seems distant, reduced to a dull growl. Inside, life pulses, alive, resilient, unyielding. As your eyes close, you understand why turf longhouses endure in story and memory. They were symbols of community. Alone, no one could outlast winter. Together, under sod and shared firelight, settlements survived. Survival in a medieval blizzard was never about walls alone. It was about people pressed shoulder to shoulder, refusing to let cold silence them. You leave the hall, smoky warmth clinging to your hair, stepping into the white void. Snow drifts higher, carved into jagged ridges by wind. Each step grows heavier. Then you notice shapes half buried in the drifts, low, round domes glistening in moonlight. At first, they seem natural, but closer inspection shows human craftsmanship. Blocks cut clean, stacked in spirals, each carefully shaped. These are snow shelters, precursors to what the Inuit perfected, also used by northern hunters, trappers, and herders in medieval times. You step closer, silence deepens. Thick walls gleam faintly in the firelight spilling from the narrow entrance. Crawling inside, the world shifts. Outside, the storm rages. Inside, a soft hush surrounds you. The air is cool but steady, the snow insulates far better than open air. Your breath fogs the interior, droplets sparkling like frost on the curved ceiling. Norse sagas and Arctic travel accounts describe similar shelters. Hunters caught in storms hollowed drifts or stacked cut blocks into domes for emergency refuge. Though not permanent homes, these snow huts were skillful, temporary lifesavers. You sit on spruce branches, resin sharp against the damp chill. The curved ceiling is perfect, blocks fitted seamlessly. A small lamp burns in animal fat, casting golden light across crystalline walls. Light refracts oddly, making the dome feel like a glowing jewel. A missionary in northern Scandinavia marveled at these huts. Inside, he could sit bare-handed for hours while his skin froze outside. Snow walls absorbed sound, making conversations intimate. Sitting here, listening to your heartbeat in the hush, it is easy to understand his wonder. Scholars debate how common snow huts were. Some say they were rare, used by Sami hunters or Arctic explorers. Others think they were a common emergency fallback. Few physical remains exist. Evidence relies on scattered notes and oral traditions. But the principle remains: shaped with care, snow shelters bring warmth and calm. Inside, the storm is muted. Meltwater hisses on the lamp, breath echoes faintly. Children giggle at the way voices bounce. Parents hush them warmly, a reminder that joy is possible even in blizzards. Folklore claims sleeping in snow shelters brought prophetic dreams, visions of game trails or safe paths. Whether true or fanciful, it shows respect for snow as both threat and guardian. You lie down, cloak tight, pressed against spruce bedding. Smoke and resin cling to your nose. The lamp flickers, casting golden light across icy blue walls. The dome feels otherworldly, a resting jewel. Outside, snow hammers relentlessly, but the hut stands steady. In the open, snow can kill, but when shaped with care, it protects. The atmosphere invites reflection. Unlike smoky huts or crowded barns, snow shelters are quietly clean, their stillness almost sacred. You can imagine hunters speaking here, their whispers absorbed by the heavy white above. Perhaps they talked of gods, spirits, or tomorrow's tasks. Whatever they said, the shelter kept them safe long enough to speak. Closing your eyes, you sense why these domes of snow live on in memory and story. They show that survival often comes from transforming danger into defense, from making an enemy into an ally. The storm itself offers both threat and solution. Snow that blinds and freezes also forms the walls that protect life. Crawling out of the snow dome, the storm still rages, endless, heavy, snarling. The wind bites at your cloak and cold nips at your fingers, yet you move forward, leaving the sparkling mound behind. The ground drops suddenly, and you find yourself in a ravine. Steep sides rise around you, and through the falling flakes, dark openings in the rock come into view. At first, they seem like caves, but approaching closer, you realize they are abandoned mines, shafts and tunnels left by medieval prospectors. Here, too, humans once found shelter. Mining was widespread in medieval Europe. From the silver veins of Saxony to the salt caverns of Poland, miners and travelers sometimes took refuge in tunnels during storms, huddling by entrances or deeper inside. The rock, cold and damp, offered little comfort, but it blocked the wind. Chronicles from 14th-century Bohemia recount men trapped in blizzards who survived by retreating into shafts until skies cleared. Stepping into one tunnel, the air changes instantly. Colder, yet calm, no longer whipped by the storm. Your footsteps echo against damp, rough stone. Drops of water fall from the ceiling, each splash magnified in the silence. Further in, a group crouches near a small fire, faces shadowed, cloaks drawn tight. Smoke curls upward but settles back down in the stagnant air. You cough, tasting pine smoke and the metallic tang of stone. It is not comfort but survival. The walls stand firm while the storm rages above. The fire provides enough warmth to prevent frostbite. Families press together, packs serve as pillows, straw scattered across the ground where miners once worked. The smell is heavy, wet earth, smoke, sweat, and a faint sulfur tang from mineral veins. Archaeological digs in Central Europe reveal soot marks in abandoned shafts, confirming fires were lit after mining ceased. Some tunnels even show rough stone walls built to block drafts, suggesting long-term reuse as shelters. What seems odd to us was practical to medieval villagers. An abandoned mine was a ready-made refuge, carved by human hands. Mining folklore adds another layer. People believed spirits called kobolds haunted tunnels, sometimes warning, sometimes misleading humans. Taking shelter meant facing cold and damp, and these imagined spirits. Families hung charms, iron crosses, or juniper at entrances, seeking permission to rest. Scholars debate how often mines served as storm shelters. Some say they were last resorts for those trapped. Others argue it was common in mining regions familiar with every shaft. Either way, the logic is clear. When stone provides a hole, why not use it? You sit by the imagined fire, smoke clinging to your cloak. The storm above is muted but present, a low rumble through stone. Children sleep fitfully, faces pressed against mothers. Men whisper about the weather, careful not to disturb the mine's spirits. Tension hangs in the air, yet quiet endurance hums in every movement. A Polish tale recounts miners trapped in a blizzard who marked time by tossing pebbles into a pool. Ripples became their clock, keeping them sane without daylight. When the storm passed, they still heard the splashes in dreams. The soundscape is stark, dripping water, sputtering fire, stone creaking under unseen pressure. The shelter feels alive, almost oppressive, yet it holds. Life persists. Leaning against the cold wall, your body protests the damp, but you know the alternative, freezing in the open, would be worse. Survival often meant sacrificing comfort. At last, you head toward the entrance, brushing soot from your hands. Snow swirls against the rock. The blizzard continues. Behind you, the mine remains a hollow womb, first carved for or, later claimed for warmth. Survival found its way even in places meant for work and wealth. The mine's damp breath follows you into the storm, and you cough to clear stone from your mouth. The blizzard hasn't eased, snow falls heavier, muffling the world in white silence. Ahead, you spot rounded, sagging structures half buried in drifts. Wooden frames, walls plastered with frozen mud and clay, reinforced by straw, mud huts hardened by frost. Even in a medieval world dominated by stone and timber, earth often served as winter walls. Inside one hut, the air shifts. A low hide flap blocks the entrance. Beyond lies a single room, walls of packed clay and straw rising like baked loaves. A small hearth burns steadily in the center. Smoke clings to the low ceiling, staining it black, but warmth is unmistakable. The smell hits instantly: wet earth, scorched straw, thick smoke. Outside, the storm is muted to a faint hum behind heavy walls. Medieval records confirm earth huts were common where stone was scarce and timber precious. Families in Eastern Europe built winter cottages half mud, half wood, relying on thick walls to retain heat. Some even dug semi-subterranean homes, mud plastered above, roofed with turf or timber. Archaeologists have found such structures in Poland and Ukraine, small, crude, yet cleverly insulated by the earth's steady temperature. Running your hand along the wall, it feels rough, cool, with straw jutting where clay flakes. Yet its thickness reassures. Each layer of earth acts as armor, storing and releasing the fire's warmth slowly. Inside, families gather near the hearth. Children sit cross-legged on woven mats, cheeks red, eyes half closed. A mother stirs stew, steam carrying barley and onion. A father works harness straps, knife scraping leather. Life continues, pressed small into the earth's embrace. Folklore adds charm. Villagers believed mud walls held memories of summer fields. Sleeping against them brought dreams of grass, warmth, and bees. Whether poetic or not, it shows how earth walls were more than shelter, they were reminders of seasons yet to come. Historians debate their durability. Some say huts collapsed easily under snow, exposing families. Others point to remains lasting centuries, suggesting sturdiness. Likely, maintenance mattered. Walls patched in spring, roofs reinforced in autumn. Always one storm away from failure, renewed by human hands. You lie back on a straw mat, cloak drawn tight. Firelight flickers across clay walls, revealing cracks and soot patterns. Smoke pricks your eyes, but warmth is undeniable. Outside, snow hisses against the roof, yet inside you feel steady, cocooned by soil and straw. A 14th-century chronicle recalls peasants sealing wall cracks with butter during harsh winters, blocking drafts and appeasing house spirits. Strange to us, but in storms, any substance became building material. Walls became patchwork testaments to ingenuity. Mud, straw, dung, butter, all fused to hold out the cold. The soundscape here is modest. A low hiss from the fire, the murmur of tired voices, and the occasional drip where melting snow leaks through the roof. It is not grand, but it is alive. Compared to the vast silence outside, this room hums with life and survival. As you stretch on the mat, warmth slowly seeping into your bones, you realize how countless winter nights were spent in spaces like this, unremarkable, invisible to history, yet essential. Stone castles and monasteries dominate chronicles, but most people endured storms in clay and straw. These humble huts were the backbone of medieval endurance. When you finally rise and push aside the hide flap, the blizzard lashes at you again. Behind you, the mud hut crouches low against the snow, walls sagging but unbroken. It is not beautiful nor sturdy by noble standards. Yet it stands, and in that persistence lies the same truth found in barns, caves, and castles alike. Shelter is never about perfection. It is about resilience. The mud hut fades into the swirling dark, its earthy scent clinging to your cloak. The storm shows no mercy, yet your steps press forward, as if the land insists you witness one more lesson in survival. Soon, you reach the forest's edge. Its snow-laden branches creak like old timbers in the wind. Scattered among the trees are small huts, smaller than longhouses, rougher than barns, but arranged deliberately. This is not a single family's refuge, but a village bound together. Neighbors leaning on each other to withstand the storm. Step between the huts, and the difference is immediate. Paths cut through drifts. Narrow tunnels of packed snow link door to door. Smoke pours from every roof, rising into the night like silent prayers. Voices filter through the darkness, shouts, laughter, even the faint notes of a fiddle. Here, Survival is not solitary. It is shared, multiplied, woven together. You push open the door of one cottage and enter a swirl of warmth and noise. The room is crowded, far beyond what its walls were meant to hold. Families from outlying farms have crammed inside, fleeing the blizzard for safety in numbers. Children chase each other around the hearth, scattering rushes across the floor. Women ladle soup into wooden bowls, passing them hand to hand. Men mend harnesses, sharpen tools, or sit with mugs of ale, breath steaming in the smoky air. Historical records confirm this scene. Memorial rolls across Europe note finds suspended during winter for gatherings of warmth. Lords understood that peasants banded together in harsh weather, and even legal systems bent for survival. Alone, a family might perish. Together, they could share food, blankets, and watch fires without pause. The smells here are intoxicating, with smoke mingled with onions, cabbage, and salted pork. It clings to your skin, fills your lungs, and yet comforts you after the storm's sharp bite. The aroma of cooking feels like a promise of life. A French village account mentions ropes strung across rooms to prevent children from falling into fires, and neighbors singing psalms in shifts to keep despair at bay. These details show that survival was not just physical, it was communal, structured by ritual and routine. Historians debate whether such gatherings were joyful or desperate. Some describe nights of laughter, feasting, and dancing, the storm-turned festival. Others portray cramped, smoky, tense spaces. Perhaps both are true. Human nature bends easily, and a blizzard could make neighbors allies or rivals depending on hunger and mood. You sit near the hearth, shoulder to shoulder with strangers. The fire roars, sparks leaping toward the soot-dark rafters. Outside, the storm is reduced to a faint hum, drowned out by voices. Stories are told, saints who tamed storms, wolves driven back by prayer, ancestors surviving harsher winters. Each tale is a shield as protective as any wall. A fragment of folklore describes villages hanging iron pots upside down above doors, claiming it confused the wind. Others painted spirals on shutters, meant to twist the storm's fury away. Whether effective or not, these practices reveal a deep belief in collective defense, through tools and symbols alike. The soundscape is lively, children giggling, mugs clattering, logs hissing as they split in the fire. A fiddler scrapes a tune in a corner, bow jerking to match the storm's rhythm. Feet stomp on rushes, half dance, half effort to stay warm. The storm may rage outside, but inside the village insists on life. You stretch your legs, feeling warmth seep into muscles stiff from trudging. The room is crowded, smoky, yet joyous. There is resilience here, not in stone or sod, but in laughter. As you lean back, eyes closing, the truth becomes clear. Of all the shelters you have seen, snow domes, sod huts, castles, barns, this is the most human. A village together, turning fear into festival, blizzard into backdrop. The blizzard will pass. Snow will melt. Spring will return. And these families will remember not just the fear, but the warmth of being together through the darkest nights. As the storm softens in your imagination, let the rhythm of these stories slow. Snow drifts gently, winds sigh through branches. Fires burn low, embers glowing steady. No struggle, just breathing. Walk once more through every shelter visited, smoky huts, haylofts, sod houses, stone refuges. Each hums with life, voices murmuring, children sleeping, fires whispering. They were never just walls or roofs, they were determination visible, love tangible, fear transformed into ingenuity. The air is gentler now. Your tired body finds ease. Imagine lying on straw, beneath furs, or nestled in snow itself. The cold no longer bites, it wraps like a cool blanket, a reminder that outside forces may be fierce, but your mind and heart remain steady. Breathe deeply. Images of longhouses, castles, wagon camps fade. All that remains is the steady crackle of embers and the rhythm of your own breath. You are safe. You are warm. The blizzard cannot reach you. Let the world blur into stillness, thoughts drifting like snowflakes, light and unhurried. The storm has spent its fury. Dawn will come. Until then, you are sheltered, protected and at peace. Sweet dreams.